And greetings, Earth Explorers. Welcome to X Squared Radio. I'm your host, Brooks Agnew, coming to you live from an undisclosed location east of the Appalachian Mountains. This is where the past meets the future. In here, the results are always positive. We might go a little past your imagination, but have no fear. You will be safely traveling with us. We're live on Truth Frequency Radio Network. This is where the truth freaks hang out, and we always let our truth freak flag fly. My Religion of Peace report tonight. In the last 7 days, the Religion of Peace conducted 26 attacks. In these 26 attacks, they killed 187 innocent people. They injured 302 innocent people. They conducted 4 suicide blasts and spread their mayhem across 14 countries. That is all from the Religion of Peace. Tonight at 8:30, I have Hillary Ramo coming on the program. She began her radio career in 2005 on AM Talk terrestrial radio in upstate New York in 2008. She began broadcasting online with Achieve Radio, where she continued for the remainder of her radio career. It's going to be a great voice, going to be a great mind. Don't miss it. We're going to be doing that at 8:30 tonight, Eastern Time. Right now, I want to begin because this is kind of Independence Day weekend, and I want to talk about the Mighty 56. The Mighty 56. Who do you think I might be talking about when I'm talking about the Mighty 56? Well, everybody knows that the 4th of July celebrates the signing of the Declaration of Independence, the historic document by means of which the 13 American colonies severed their political connections with Great Britain and declared themselves to be the United States of America. Now, except for that declaration, it wasn't signed on the 4th of July. The colonists formally declared their independence on July 2nd, which John Adams promptly called the most memorable epocha in the history of America, predicting that it will be celebrated by succeeding generations as the Great Anniversary Festival. For Independence Day 24/7, Wall Street is taking a look who the 56 signers of the Declaration were. We draw on sources such as ushistory.org and others. It was on July 4th, however, that the Continental Congress approved the final text of the Declaration after jointly making some 86 changes in the draft composed by Thomas Jefferson and 4 colleagues. But that still wasn't when this seminal document of our nation was signed. That happened for the most part on August 2nd. But as, 5 of the signers didn't affix their signatures until the following weeks. All these who signed the Declaration were delegates to the Second Continental Congress, which met in Philadelphia. The Congress was a convention of representatives from the various colonies. First one was held in 1774, sought to ease rising tensions between the British and the colonists while safeguarding the rights of the latter. The Second Congress, which met from 1775 through 1781, was more radical and ultimately decided that full independence from Great Britain was essential. Thomas Jefferson was charged with overseeing the drafting of a declaration to that effect. Jefferson, of course, went on to become our 3rd president and is in the top 10 when historians rank every president. Of course, the majority of the signers were, the majority of the delegates were all men. The majority of the delegates, all of which were men, who signed the Declaration had been born in one of the 13 colonies, though a few were native to Great Britain or Ireland. Many were gentlemen farmers, and many sometimes the same ones. Some of the signers are world famous, among them Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, and some are kind of obscure. The majority, however, owned slaves. 41 of the 56, according to one study, though were also ardent abolitionists among their number. Some came to bad ends. One lived to be aged 95. Now, a lot of people want to know what's the fate of the 56 that signed the Declaration of Independence. Well, the five signers were captured. Five signers were captured by British and brutally tortured as traitors. That didn't turn out well for them. 9 of them fought in the War for Independence and died from wounds or from hardships they suffered. 2 lost their sons in the Continental Army. Another 2 had sons captured. At least a dozen of the 56 had their homes pillaged and burned. So what kind of men were they? Well, 25 were lawyers or jurists. 11 were merchants. 9 were farmers or large plantation owners. 1 was a teacher. 1 was a musician. And 1 was even a printer. These were men of means and education, yet they signed the Declaration of Independence knowing full well that the penalty could be death if they were captured. In the face of the advancing British Army, the Continental Congress fled from Philadelphia to Baltimore on December 12th, 1776. It was an especially anxious time for John Hancock, the president, as his wife had just given birth to a baby girl due to the complications stemming from the trip to Baltimore. The child lived only a few months. William Ellery's signing, at the risk of his fortune, proved only too realistic. In December of 1776, during 3 days of British occupation of Newport, Rhode Island, Ellery's house was burned and all of his property was destroyed. Richard Stockton, a New Jersey State Supreme Court justice, had rushed back to his estate near Princeton after signing the Declaration of Independence to find out that his wife and his children were living like refugees with friends. They had been betrayed by a Tory sympathizer who had revealed Stockton's own whereabouts. British troops pulled him from his bed one night, beat him, and threw him in jail, where he almost starved to death. When he was finally released, he went home to find his estate had been looted. His possessions were burned, his horses were stolen. Judge Stockton had been so badly treated in prison that his health was ruined, and he died before the war's end. So you see, and I could go on through all of these 56 signers. Most of them came to very bad ends. Independence Day 2019, the war against supporters of America continued. The American flag is still a target of those who hate freedom and liberty. The anti-federalists of colonial times became the DNC officially in 1848, but they have never stopped their fight to put the states back under the crown. To this day, they rape, they pillage, and burn those who support the American flag. They openly assault patriots with clubs, chemicals, fists, boots, and social media trolling, as well as death threats. Anyone who stands up for liberty and freedom of speech or the right to bear arms is vilified and even economically sanctioned by banks, newspaper advertisers, and entertainers. Today, there are not just 56 signers of the Declaration. Today, there are 63 million Americans who love this country. There are more than 100 million people in foreign countries who support President Trump and his fight against the global syndicate. We are united. We love one another. And yes, we even love the ones who hate this country. But that does not mean that we will not form ranks to defend her from the tyranny of fascism and communism. The anti-federalists who killed off many of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, they're still around today in some form, and they have strong allies. First, they have the 6 major media moguls who control what is affectionately called the fake stream news. They write the words that the news actors and TV talk show hosts read to you over and over again all day long. They do not allow stories to be publicized that show their black bloc soldiers as thugs and anti-American enemy combatants. They promote their new Ku Klux Klan, this time in black masks instead of white hoods, as merely peaceful protesters. Tell that to the Americans from all walks of life, with cracked skulls, blindness, disfiguring burns, and dead husbands and fathers. More than 100 policemen have been assassinated in the past 10 years while sitting in their patrol cars eating dinner or standing on patrol on the sidewalk. To this day, the press refuses to cover the scores of Americans murdered in Chicago every single week. They refuse to cover the disease, the rape, murders, and robberies that occur on the streets of San Francisco or Portland or Seattle, in tent cities that have ruined those cities. Second, they have the four tech giants. Facebook and Snapchat, Twitter, Google, and YouTube have a combined net worth greater than all but 7 countries. They actively, openly, and effectively meddle in elections in every state and the national elections. They manipulate data searches to only provide sources that benefit their position of globalism. They jail and delete accounts that post content that does not support their position. This practice removes hundreds of millions of dollars in free enterprise popular content providers who have tens of millions of followers. The tech giants promote and provide preferential positioning for content that supports their position. It has been documented that through this practice of meddling, as much as 5 to 8% of the voters tend to lean toward their positions. In many cases, this means the election itself. Third, the globalists have funded and transported 22 million illegal foreign citizens into more than 200 carefully prepared sanctuary cities across 28 states. These foreign citizens extract $500 million a day from our local economies and export it to foreign countries. This practice devastates local economies that rely on that money to cycle many times through the economy in rent, groceries, gasoline, and entertainment revenue. When it leaves our economy, that cycle stops prematurely, and the local economy starves for capital. These foreign citizens are also processed by the anti-federalists to become voters in our elections. Their presence tilts the balance of voting power in their direction. Hamas activist Rashida Tlaib was elected in Detroit without opposition. Somali tax fraud and anti-American activist Ilhan Omar was elected unopposed in Minnesota. A bartender and part-time actress, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, was elected in the walkaway vacuum left in the Bronx. Chicago has more than 100,000 illegal immigrants registered to vote. Boston, more than 109,000. California has more than 449,000 non-citizens exposed as registered voters when they refused to accept jury duty because they were not citizens. They are already on the voter rolls. They may have already voted, canceling the votes of Americans who voted for state and federal candidates. Make no mistake, Earth Explorers. We declared our independence in 1776 from globalists who ruled the world for thousands of years. Those forces have regrouped, and they have invaded our nation. They are in position to disembowel us from the inside as we speak. They want liberty and freedom to be removed from the earth again, so they can reign with blood and horror without anyone in their way. especially the armed American. President Trump will begin the process of deporting the Democrats' soldiers tomorrow. It will be a highly exaggerated event by the press as a humanitarian crisis. They invested billions in making it an inevitability. It is a crisis for them and their decade-long effort to destroy America. Their plan to make their anti-federalist party unstoppable for decades to come will fail if Trump is successful. And time is of the essence. It is precisely why Trump is fighting every battle in Washington to get the citizenship questions back on the census. The removal of millions of illegal voters must be done before the end of this year so that our census year and our election year will be free from foreign meddling. There is no room for failure or defeat. This is the red line in the sand. No surrender and no retreat. God bless America. So I want to talk a little bit about other things. I do have a guest coming on at 8:27. I'm going to call her, bring her into the program, and after the break, she's going to join us. Her name is Hillary Raimo. She, at times, Hillary would guest host or help produce a short run on other networks, including World Puja Network, Capricorn Radio, and she was a host on the BBS Radio Network, where I was for 10 years. In 2016, Hillary started Yin Radio TV, an online content platform, and began to mentor inspiring radio hosts, many who began their own shows soon thereafter. As a regular contributor to popular online magazines like Savannah East, her articles can also be found in Rebel Society magazine and Healing Springs Journal. If you want to know what her website is, get prepared for the show. It is Hillary Raimo. That's RAIMO.com, HillaryRaimo.com. And you can follow her at Hillary Raimo everywhere. I want to talk a little bit about entangled time before we get to the end of the first segment. You know, as a physicist, we're always fascinated with concepts of time. We do thought experiments all the time. In the summer of 1935, the physicists Albert Einstein and Erwin Schrödinger engaged in a rich, multifaceted, and sometimes fretful correspondence about the implications of the new theory of quantum mechanics. Now, I have a lot of people that listen to this program that are interested in quantum mechanics. My heart goes out to you. It's not an easy thing to be odd like that. But the focus of their worry was what Schrödinger later dubbed entanglement. The inability to describe two quantum systems or particles independently after they have interacted. Until his death, Einstein remained convinced that entanglement showed how quantum mechanics was actually incomplete. Schrödinger thought that entanglement was the defining feature of the new physics, but this didn't mean that he accepted it lightly. He said, "I know, of course, how the hocus pocus works mathematically, but I do not like such a theory." Schrödinger's famous cat, I have a cat here in the studio who opens the door to come into the studio and does not close the door behind him. Now he's trying to open the door to get out. And he probably won't close it after he leaves there. He just opened it. See, that's what I'm talking about. That's my cat. Schrödinger's cat, suspended between life and death, first appeared in these letters, a byproduct of the struggle to articulate what bothered the pair. The problem is that the entanglement violates how the world ought to work. Information theoretically cannot travel faster than the speed of light, for one. But in 1935, in a paper, Einstein and his co-authors showed how entanglement leads to what is now called quantum non-locality. the eerie link that appears to exist between entangled particles. We call it entangled particle theory on this program. In two quantum systems, if they meet and then separate, even across a distance of, well, theoretically thousands of light years, it becomes impossible to measure the features of one system, such as position, momentum, spin, polarity, without instantly steering the other into a corresponding state. This is what we call spooky action at a distance. Well, up to today, most experiments have tested entanglement over spatial gaps, like across the lab, or across town, or in another town. The assumption is that the non-local part of quantum non-locality refers to the entanglement of properties across space. But what if entanglement also occurs across time? You see, this is where it really gets fascinating. This is where we kind of connect our consciousness across space and time, in the past, in the future. And I wrote a book about it called Remembering the Future. And the answer is that yes, you can observe things in the future and your observation does have an effect. But does that mean that things that are going to happen in the future can affect you in the past? This is a very good question. Just when you thought quantum mechanics couldn't get any weirder, a team of physicists at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem reported just in 2013 that they had successfully entangled photons that never coexisted. That is to say, they didn't come together, were part of one giant ion, and then separated. That didn't happen. They didn't know each other. They never met. Previous experiments involving a technique called entanglement swapping had already showed quantum correlations across time by delaying the measurement of one of the coexisting entangled particles. But Eli Megadish, this is his name, Eli Megadish, and his collaborators were the first to show entanglement between photons whose lifespans did not overlap at all. And here's how they did it. First, they created an entangled pair of photons. And soon after, they measured the polarization of a photon, which thus flipped the corresponding photon on the sister particle. Photon 2 was sent on a wild goose chase while a new entangled pair, 3 and 4, was created. Photon 3 was then measured along with the itinerant photon 2 in such a way that the entanglement relationship was then swapped from the old pairs. Now, sometime later, the polarization of the lone survivor, this photon 4 way out there, is measured, and the results are compared with those of the long-dead photon 1. Now, what is the result of this? What does this prove? Because it's kind of confusing to do over the radio. I can't even do it with my hands so you can see it. The data revealed that the existence of quantum correlations between temporarily non-local photons, that's 1 and 4, never met. 1 and 2 did, 3 and 4 did, but we kind of swapped the relationship. Yeah, it is a little like dating in high school. That is, entanglement can occur across two quantum systems that never coexisted. Now, what does this mean? Well, on the surface, we haven't had but 6 years, and that's not a long time for PhD laureates to worry about, or Nobel laureates to worry about. It implies that the measurements carried out by your eye upon starlight falling through your telescope this winter somehow dictates the polarity of photons more than 9 billion years old in the past, you see? Now, I know it sounds outlandish, but Megadish and his colleagues can't resist speculating on possible and rather spooky interpretations of their results. You see, as a consequence, simultaneity went from being an absolute property to being a relative one. There is no single timekeeper for the universe. Precisely when something is occurring depends on your precise location relative to what you are observing. It's known as your frame of reference. And we talk about this all the time on this program, and in the book, it's called frame dragging. Your relationship to the frame is most important to the actual problem at hand. Hillary Ramos coming on in about 5 minutes, 4 minutes. We're going to take a quick break. YouTubers, hang on, and we'll be right back with Hillary Ramo. And I told you, 2 minds, 2 voices, 2 hours, 1 radio program. We'll be right back after this. This is X Squared Radio. I'm your host, Brooks Agnew. See you in 3 minutes.
Extendivite, a 7-herb combination made from garlic, cayenne, hawthorn, bilberry, ginkgo biloba, valerian, and milk thistle. Extendivite feeds our body with the right nutrients to keep us healthy. Just listen to what Arthur has to say.
I was just calling to tell you what a great product you have. I had used this about 10 years ago after I had.
Hi, Hillary. How you doing?
Hi, Brooks. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. We'll bring the studio back in just a couple of minutes, but yeah, I'm excited about having you on. It's been years, and I've always wanted to speak to you, just have you on the air. So this will be a great time for both of us, I promise.
Oh, great. Well, that makes me happy. Thank you so much.
Let me close my office door because my feckless cat opens the door, leaves the office. He knows how to open the door, but he doesn't close it behind him. So
I have one of those. I have one of those too. So how you been? Real quick, how you been?
Well, we're live on YouTube right now, but the studio is on break, so we have about 1:30 seconds before the commercials end, and then we'll bring the studio back in.
Great.
So where are you located?
I'm in upstate New York.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
So you're on Eastern time too, so this isn't
Yes.
too late for you either, so we're good.
No, thank you. So how you been? How's everything going?
Oh
Good?
my gosh, I'm working way too hard. I'm still doing the engineering consulting and writing and trying to get the TV program produced and doing the radio program, so it's too many things at one time.
But you're managing.
Yeah, well, managing with a small M. I decided about 5 or 6 years ago that I'm only going to have moments from here on out. I'm not doing anything permanent.
Go project to project. That's how I do it.
That's it.
Yeah. It works.
Yes. All right. So we will bring the studio back in about 10 seconds, and we'll hear the last part of it, and then intro music, and we'll be live on
Great.
TFR. We're live on YouTube, and that's okay. My YouTube friends, they understand. They're watching and chatting away, and
Hi, YouTube friends.
yes, this is Hillary Ramo. I'm going to read her bio here in just a second. Got about 10 seconds. Studio coming back in 3, 2, 1.
EnigmaTV.com.
No hate, no hype, no fear.
You're listening to Truth Frequency Radio.
We are TFR.
Squared Radio, Earth Explorers. Good to have you here. Hillary Ramo began her radio career in 2005 on AM Talk Terrestrial Radio in upstate New York. In 2008, she began broadcasting online with Achieve Radio, where she continued for the remainder of her radio career. At times, Hillary would guest host or help produce or short run on other networks, which we all do. She was on World Puja Network, Capricorn Radio, and she was a host on the BBS Radio Network, where I was for 10 years. In 2016, Hillary started Yin Radio TV, an online content platform, and began to mentor inspiring radio hosts, many who went on to have their own shows later. As a regular contributor to popular online magazines like Savannah East, her articles can also be found in Rebel Society magazine and Healing Springs Journal. Please follow her at Hillary Ramo. That's Raimo, Hillary Ramo, and her website is hillaryramo.com. Welcome to the program. How are you?
Hi, Brooks. Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, this is going to be great. I build this as two minds for 2 hours, maybe two different perspectives. So we'll see what happens here. We talked a little bit on Facebook about the digital empire, that digital world that we have entered into, I guess, in the last 20 years. It's really become prominent. To me, it's kind of like, I don't know, we created a new neural network, and for people like you and me, it's an upgrade, but for the next generation, they're hardwired to it. What do you think this means for the race of mankind? Because everybody's on it.
Well, I have a lot of thoughts about that, and we'll probably get into it a lot this next 2 hours. I wrote a book last year. I was on the airwaves for a long time, and I chose 20 conversations that I felt were really relevant for what we're facing right now with just that. So I went through all of my material and my content and chose these 20 conversations to help people better understand why and how we got here. I think the digital age is a very large double-edged sword. And I think that it can help and it also can hurt. It depends on which end of the spectrum you're on and how you use it. And I think it's also becoming something that can be used against platforms, against people who speak on certain topics. And I have systematically watched this. I technically retired from radio back in 2017. I stopped doing a show. I'm back on now in KCAA, terrestrial radio in Los Angeles and Southern California. And it's been an interesting trip, to be honest with you, because I think a lot of people like us get massive interference with certain things, and certain people have agendas that come into your life and mess things up. But you can overcome that, and that's the good news. In the digital age, we just have to learn how to navigate it. I think it's creating a very interesting neural pathology in all of us, and we have to be very careful not to let it overtake us.
Well, I think there are a couple different aspects to this. One is that there's our aspect, that we're putting our lives, our thoughts, our ideas, our voice, our writing, our personal pictures, our personal data out there on the web. And some of us are public figures, but most of us are not. We're just trying to connect with old friends, or maybe trying to make a presence for ourselves out there somewhere. Then the other aspect to it is that there are companies that have grown to immense size and immense capabilities that have now consolidated. When the internet first started up, I mean high-speed internet first started up, we had what? AOL, we had Alta Vista, we didn't even know what Google was in those days. We had all kinds of browsers and all kinds of home pages that people had, but it didn't take long, did it, for the big multi-billion-dollar multinational concerns to buy up everybody, and now we've consolidated down to how many?
It's a good question. How many? No, nobody really talks about this or really has these conversations. It surprises me, actually. And most people say, well, I don't have anything to hide, and I'm not doing anything wrong on the internet, so who cares if they police it? Well, I have watched YouTube and platforms like that systematically take people out and take their channels down and demonetize content. Being a content producer, what does that mean these days? It means you make something and you put it online and you hope somebody comes along and watches it. You used to be able to make a lot of money on YouTube. Before it went corporate, it was really a great platform. In fact, the internet was actually very useful, I think. You could network, you could use social media to network and meet people and expand your businesses and move forward with that. But now it has become so tightly controlled that if you have an opinion that goes against the official stories, then suddenly, you don't get as much traffic. Suddenly your numbers aren't there. Suddenly you're not getting enough likes. You're not getting anything. And really, we have created a social culture that puts a lot of weight into that stuff. And if you're not getting it, you're not as valuable as somebody who is. So we're already there. We've already come and gone. This is already real. And people don't really realize the detrimental effects of this. I don't know. Have you noticed it? I mean, I've noticed it. I've been watching for years. I've been on the radio for a very long time. I've been producing content for a very long time. So I have an opinion on this, and I think it's a worthy opinion because I've watched the right things. What do you think?
Well, yes, I've been on the air for 15 years, and I've written 10 books. Now, the first 8 books were pretty well received, and I had good traffic on, and I bought Facebook ads and Google AdWords and all of those things, and followed the analytics, so I knew what my ads were doing, I knew what the videos were doing, and I spent, tens of thousands of dollars on advertisement because it's really the only way to sell books unless you want to do book signings or whatever. And then I wrote a book called Charm of Favor. And within 5 or 6 days, the book went to number 2 on Amazon. And about 10 days later, my Facebook traffic dropped to 0. I mean, it flatlined. It didn't matter how much money I spent. They canceled my ads. They banned my ads. They would not let my ads run. And I stopped selling books on Facebook. It was over for me. I fell victim to the Facebook soldiers. They didn't like the book. They didn't want the book out there. And effectively, digitally, they burned it. So yes, I have been a victim of this as well.
Well, I mean, it's a real thing. And the problem with this is I call them digital prisons. What happens is you become a content creator like yourself, and you put 10 books out, and then you write the one book that pisses somebody off, and they decide that you are not allowed to have friends, and you are not allowed to get any attention whatsoever. It's a really easy thing to do in the digital age, is to take somebody out, burn their book digitally, no traffic, no acknowledgement, no reach. And platforms have so much power that we have to really realize that the ones that get all the attention, how does that happen versus somebody who has something just as valuable, if not more, to share with the public sector? I mean, we have entangled pretty much every aspect of our life with the digital screens. A lot of work industries have put all of their stuff online. So if anything goes down, or they have, ransoms and stuff like that, crazy stuff happens. But, some, like you said before, there's these people that don't really use Facebook for this kind of stuff. They just want to connect to Aunt Jane and Uncle Joe and share pictures of their kids and their food. And they just want to use it for those kinds of reasons, which is fine. But, if you're not using it for that reason and you're using it as a way to get your stuff out, which used to be so much easier, even though I'm sure there were still some aspects that were bothersome, now it's really obvious. I mean, I see it all the time. I'm talking to Joe Martino on my show in a couple weeks. He runs CE News, and he has been a content producer for a really long time. And he has noticed a significant change in traffic since he started to produce certain content. So, I mean, we have so much advances in the technology, some that we don't even realize is there, that it's so easy for platforms like Facebook or Twitter or social media platforms to be able to filter out what they don't want to reach out. And of course, this whole Russian interference garbage, like, it's garbage, okay? is being used as one gigantic excuse to scrub content clean. Recently, we watched YouTube take down channels. KCAA's YouTube channel, by the way, KCAA, the network I'm on, their YouTube got flagged. So now they're on a probational period where everything has to be reviewed. Reviewed by who? Who is the wizard behind the curtain at YouTube? Does anybody know how to contact anyone in YouTube to do anything about any problems? So they struck they started to strike my videos. Oh, I think around 2011, I started to post content. I had guests on that, was clearly going against the official story of a lot of things. And so YouTube started to strike my videos, demonetize, eventually demonetized my channel. I had somebody come in a completely deceptive way, take my content, put that content on their channel to supposedly help me, and then kept every single dollar they made on my content. And then I was competing with myself. If you Googled my name on YouTube, all their stuff would come up because they had a bigger channel, they had more subscribers, they were making much more money. So you would get their channel before you even got my channel, and it's my channel. Yep. So I had to go head to head with some YouTube people and some really crazy people out there between 2011 and 2015. No recourse, no way to fix it. I ended up losing tons of money because of YouTube's issue. And then it turned into a corporate entity along the line and started to take out people's content. And now it just did another scrubbing recently in the last few weeks and took down a lot of content.
Yeah, I heard it took out something like 10,000 channels. And of course, I've never been monetized on YouTube. I put my stuff out there. It's free. You don't have to donate. You don't have to buy anything. I don't have any advertisers that I need. I fund everything myself. I put my own word out there. But I would like to sell books. I used to sell 200 books a day. Now I sell 2. And it's, of course, I don't have repeat buyers. They don't come back and buy the same book again. But there are, at any given moment, about 1 billion people online, some various kinds of media, either Facebook or Twitter or YouTube or Snapchat or whatever. And what I want to do, and I think what other authors want to do, is reach those people. I want to reach people that don't know me, because I think that, like you, once our content gets in front of them, they're going to go, oh, wow, Hillary Ramo, I'm interested in that content. They read it, they buy it, they get some of your products, they get some of your sessions that you do with them, and your business grows. That's what's supposed to happen. But, and I'm going to use a word here that gets kind of overplayed. It gets overplayed a lot on the street, but I know what the real meaning is. And the word is fascist. Now, in a fascist government, you have to go back to, I guess, the 1930s and 1940s, when real fascist governments existed. Franco, Mussolini, Hitler. Fascist government occurs when corporations put their executives inside the government. And then those officials, which are now working for the government, they use government, either the army or the laws, like tax laws and revenue laws or licensing laws. They use those laws to protect competition from competing with the companies they came from. So companies like Monsanto and Libby and Boeing and Lockheed and all these companies go into government. They become part of government, and then they prevent people from competing with their old companies. And that's happening with the internet as well. Now, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because I'm thinking to myself, why would YouTube care? I mean, Hillary, you have millions of listeners. I have millions of listeners. Those people would buy everything from shaving gel to Christmas tree lights. And our advertisers would want to reach our customers by putting ads on our shows. Why would YouTube shoot their advertisers in the foot that would actually buy space? They would buy ad space to reach our customers if they ban our customers. That makes no sense to me. That's a bad business model. Doesn't it sound like that to you?
Well, I think it's about content. So I don't think they really care about the revenue that would come in from advertising from shows like ours. Because one, I think it's about content. I think they're trying to manipulate what people get exposed to because of what we've seen in the last few years since Trump's taken office, especially. We have really watched a systematic shutdown of content, a real censorship issue.
Sure.
Okay, nobody can argue that because anybody with half a brain can watch it online and see that it's happening. It's kind of done
You
right.
can do your own experiments, people. You can
You
put
sure
your own
can.
search words into Google and watch it for yourself.
But you mentioned the justice system, and you mentioned executives going into government. Aaron Schwartz really did the whole world a fantastic favor when he broke into the dark web and went into the files that he wasn't supposed to go into and revealed publicly that the justice system is literally written to support the corporate entities that exist in our country. Of course, he's dead because they went into his life and tore him apart, digitally destroyed him, castrated him really, and supposedly he committed suicide, and that's debatable. But you know what he really, and then of course they character assassinate him, just like they do with anybody, like that goes
Manning
in.
or
Yeah, Kelsey Manning, Edward Snowden.
Assange.
I was on the air when all this was happening, and I feel like I'm in another dimension years later, and people don't remember what really happened. It's like the storyline has been controlled, just like with everything else. And I don't care if I sound like a conspiracy theorist because it's true. And then they character assassinate with that label, conspiracy theorists, just like they do with the UFOs. They crack people, they call them crazy. One person calls psychopath, there's a whole slew of people jump on that and run with it, and it can destroy somebody and shut them down and shut them up. It's easy to do. Okay, but what we have to be honest with is that people like Aaron Schwartz go in and do these things, and the world is really run by people with great computer skills. Okay, the Mueller report was about computer hackers. It wasn't about Trump and Russia. It was about arresting the hackers that live in Russia. It was about getting Julian Assange. He really did release some good information, but I have to admit, and some people will probably get mad at me for this, and that's okay. But when I read his releases while I was on the air to see if it was something I wanted to talk about on my show, I was never really quite impressed. Some of his releases really weren't as detrimental as they said it was. And so some of the content really was like, okay, so he released this. There were more people in the world at that time doing more astounding things and releasing more astounding information than him. And I always felt like he was the modern day Q. He's the voice, the person people put on a pedestal and listen to, want to follow around and give all their power away to, and not do their own research because it's so easy to just figure out what he's saying. And I think we have to be really careful with that. People are forgetting what's really happened, and the storylines are being hijacked, and content is being erased, deleted, completely gone forever. And people have short-term memory loss. I mean, the whole culture that the digital age has produced is short. You can only watch a 2-minute video before you lose, interest in it. I mean, these kind of studies have really been done. These have really been done. These are real studies. I couldn't tell you what they are now, but you can go look them up. You do an hour of your own research time, you can find out a lot. But now, with all the censorship going on and traffic being rerouted, and you have all these things happening, there is a really very real systematic shutdown of certain content. And I've seen it, I've watched it. Alternative media was an extremely powerful force before all this started happening. People were listening and having opinions.
I got my opinions about alternative media too, because I'm a statistician, and I was called one night by a pollster, and I was asked the questions, whatever they were, who I was going to vote for and why and all that stuff. And I said, hey, can I ask you a couple questions? And they went, yeah, sure. I said, why did you call my landline? And they said, oh, we only call landlines. I said, why? They said, because we need demographic information. When we call somebody in Charlotte, North Carolina, we want somebody in Charlotte, North Carolina. We don't want somebody living in Nebraska with a Charlotte phone number. So we only call landlines. So I said, oh, okay, thank you very much. So then I called AT&T and I said, listen, I have a question for you. How many households have landlines today? And they said, well, about 15%. This is in late 2016. I said, so 15% of the households have landlines, and what do the other people do? They said, oh, they're on our mobile plans. They only have cell phones. So I said, okay, thanks very much. So then I said, well, if the pollsters are calling only people with landlines, what's the demographic of people that have landlines? Turns out they were 63 years or older. They owned their own home. They got their information from satellite TV or from cable TV, which meant that they listened to the main networks. And I said, so what about the other 85% of America? What are they doing? Well, they're listening and getting all their news on smartphones. So I surveyed 1,000 smartphone-only people. They had no landline, only smartphones. And I asked them a series of questions. Number one, where do you get your news? And they said, well, I get everything off my cell phone. I watch TV, I watch news, I listen to YouTube's, Facebook, Twitter, all that stuff on my phone. I said, well, great. So what news sources do you use? Oh, Drudge Report, Breitbart, Newsmax, WorldNet Daily. These are what the fake stream news is calling alternative media. Well, they're not. It's the real media. If 85% of the country's accessing that kind of media, I'm sorry, but that's the mainstream news. So I then asked them the final question, who are you going to vote for? 78% of them said Donald Trump. So I did the math, and it came out to 311 electoral votes. I published that in October of 2016. I missed it by 5 electoral votes. People thought I was crazy. And I said, you don't even know what you're talking about, because the pollsters, Quinnipiac, Gallup, all the other pollsters, they're only calling landlines. It's a small segment of society that doesn't represent true America. And so they missed it. So it's not alternative media. We are the media.
I don't consider any of them alternative media. I agree with you. I think that, that list of stations is not alternative at all. I think Truth Frequency Radio is alternative media. I think George Norrie is alternative media. I think, I consider myself alternative media, although I'm on mainstream media now. But I'm on mainstream media now purposefully. So I'm aware of that. And when I talk to other people about alternative media, they do say the same thing, what you just said. Oh, I get it from this and that and everything. That's not alternative media. Alternative media is being wiped out. It's being just ignored and ghosted and basically just hoping, wishing that it all goes away. And I really have a lot of respect for the people that are still doing it in the face of all this, because, I think for once, I saw for a little while before I got off the air, a lot of the quote alternative media channels and networks and so on and so forth were attacking each other. And they were going after each other, and they were, it was cutthroat, and they were trying to destroy everybody's reputation, and they were trying to bring everybody down and prove everybody wrong. Oh, that person's a this and that person's a this. It was very disheartening, because I think that if they could get their act together and work together, I really think they could change the world, because people were listening. I'm going to give you a perfect example, Alex Jones. Okay, I talked about this a lot last year, and I wrote about it in my book. At the height of Alex Jones' career, he had the most listeners that I knew of. He had the largest audience of any of us, really, and he had a great power in his hands. When he had Donald Trump on his radio show in early 2016, I was like, what? This is unbelievable. I mean, I've never heard of a presidential candidate giving any of us the time of day, right? Not even George Norrie. So it was really, really amazing to me that Trump got on his channel and he talked the talk. He talked the conspiracy talk. He talked about the new world order. He talked about Clinton. He talked about all the things that all of us were talking about too. But, we have millions of listeners, but do those millions of listeners admit they listen to us? I don't know. It's kind of like a underground thing, if you will, for a little while.
Yeah, it is kind of underground. But I mean, I love, Don Newsom, who runs BBS Radio. They've been at it a long time.
I love Don and his brother. I worked with them for a while. They're great people. They're really open-minded, and you can talk about whatever you want. And they just support. So the support is unconditional, and they've always been that way, and I still talk to them. So, but anyway, going back to Alex Jones, Roger Stone booked Donald Trump on the show, and if you look at Roger Stone's background, it's very interesting. And so Trump just kind of talked the talk. The conspiracy talk that was so popular, and everybody was listening.
Quick break. We'll be right back after this. Don't go away. Okay, we dropped the studio out just for a minute so we don't have to listen to the news. It's just you and me on YouTube right now.
Hi, YouTube.
I do simulcast. I do the audio on Truth Frequency Radio, and I do the YouTube Live because it builds a different kind of audience. And the chat room just goes and goes and goes for days and days on these programs. We are really hitting on a super big subject. And I remember it was about a year and a half ago. No, it was longer than that because it was under Barack Obama when Ajit Pai was in the minority on the FCC. And the Democrat-controlled FCC tried to take control of the internet. They tried to make it a Class 2 utility, which would have meant that government could control the content. They could control the baud speeds, the broadcast speeds, the bits that you could upload and download, and they would eventually gain a lot of control over it, just like they do any public utility. And fortunately, that was delayed, and finally Trump was elected. The majority control over the FCC changed. Ajit Pai got in place, and he rescinded that order. So that put Facebook and it put the internet back as a Class 1, which turned it back into what I call the Wild Wild West, not the World Wide Web, but the Wild Wild West. And it meant that access or broadband providers could pick and choose what areas were going to get high speed. They could give high speed to, for instance, Amazon and Netflix, and deny it to smaller providers. But it also meant that speeds varied depending on how much you paid. The more you paid, the faster speed you got. And what they wanted was one speed for everybody, which would have been slow speed. I think it would have choked everything down.
Yeah.
But I think we're to the point now where we have the 4 tech giants that have more net worth than all but 7 countries. And now they're doing this digital book burning. They're doing this digital content burning and content provider burning. And they mean to influence the election. They're meddling openly with the election, and they mean to get Trump out of office by any means necessary. Now we have a situation where we have to do something about these big tech giants. So I want to talk to you this next segment, what your ideas are about that. And we'll bring the studio back in 3, 2, 1.
Rated an estimated $185 million since its Tuesday.
This is the Truth Frequency Radio Network. TFR.
Truth Frequency Radio.
Welcome back to X Squared Radio, second hour. My guest, Hillary Raimo, her website, hillaryraimo.com. That's RAIMO, hillaryraimo.com. Make sure to check it out. Lots of good content there, books, TV, also counseling sessions, great stuff there. I promise you, make your way over there. Even during the broadcast, that's fine with us. But we're live on Truth Frequency Radio at tfrlive.com. You can call in. This is a live call-in program. We would certainly welcome your telephone calls. It is 213-233-3998, 213-233-3998. We are talking about the digital empire that we find ourselves, I think, immersed in. Everybody I see, whether they're on the bus, whether they're at a stoplight, whether they're in the line waiting to make their order at the fast food place, they're looking at some kind of media on their phone. They're either looking at sports, they're looking at Facebook or Twitter or some kind of news, or answering their email. I mean, we've incorporated it into our regular idle time, our few moments of idle time that we have. So we're immersed in it. The challenge is that now we have 4 or 5 tech giants. We call them the masters of the universe in some circles, but these 4 tech giants that have taken control of that immersion. And they are the ones that are judging what we get first look at. Now, I think, Hillary, what we're seeing is our generation, as I said, this is an upgrade for us. I mean, we went from pagers and payphones to smartphones. This is a huge upgrade for us, but we adapted. We're adaptable. But our kids, they're hardwired to it. And I think what's going to happen, that instead of the tech giants creating a controlled George Orwell 1984 population, we're going to find a way to go around them. What do you think?
Well, this year, Meridian International hosts the World Economic Forum in New York City, and it was broadcasted on C-SPAN, so I watched it. And by the way, to become a member of Meridian International, it's a minimum fee of $10,000. It's $10,000 or $25,000. So we're talking about a very select, privileged population who gets to organize these events and choose their speakers. One of the interesting things that they said during this conference was they called on tech giant leaders to police content. You know, think about it. I mean, if the New World Order is real, okay, and you know, there's a lot of people who have pushed that information for a very long time, and there are certain families that have more influence than others. We all know who they are. And if this is real, then how do they stop that from happening? Well, they call on tech giants to police content. How do tech giants police content? Well, they create algorithms, filter feeds. If you're pushing too much of what they call, quote, hate speech, which is really loosely defined, and that should be a real big problem. But unfortunately, because of the social culture that's been created in the United States, they are shouting in the streets. They want it. They have actually been groomed, I guess is the right word, to demand it because Trump's in office. See, I don't think Trump really minds being hated. I think that he doesn't really care if people like him or not. He just is a businessman and he goes about his business and he does his thing. And I don't agree with all of his policies, but I think in some ways he's done some good, and nobody's acknowledging his good because they're so caught in this hate loop. And they don't let themselves get out of it by critical thinking. Critical thinking has been a problem as well. So, you know, if you look at China, China is an interesting example, okay? China has put into place a social credit score system. This is like straight out of Black Mirror, okay?
Oh, yeah.
That episode. I did a show with Mel Fabregas about this, I think last year. And we were talking about it, and people were like, no, that's never going to happen. Not here. That's impossible. That's crazy. Well, if you look at what's happening in China, people cannot buy property if their social credit score is not a certain. It's just like a regular credit score if you can't get a credit card if you have bad credit, right? But this allows people to be judged and scored accordingly by their peers, their friends, their social networks. We all know how bad that can go. If you piss the wrong person off, they can give you 1 star instead of 5 stars, and there goes your social credit score. It also affects the ability to be able to fly. So people in China can't get on a plane unless they have a certain level of credit score. That's social
Wow,
credit
I did
score.
not know that.
Well, it's you should look it up because it's quite eye-opening. Now, the technology that is allowing to implement this is the facial recognition technology, among other things. And there's articles online. You can find lots of information about it. I don't know how much of it is real or not real, but it's very clear on some platforms what's going on. So they want to take this system and they want to put it in the United States. They want to put it in the United States.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, we have a leg up on it. Look at our own credit bureau. If you lose your job and it takes you 3 or 4 months to find a new job and you miss, say, 3 credit card payments or 6 credit card payments because you have 3 credit cards, and then you get your job and you make some money and you catch those payments back up again. Do you realize that those missed payments stay on your credit score for 7 years? 7 years that bad credit stays on your credit score. Now, I call it a slave score because, years ago I started making enough money that I didn't have to have credit cards anymore. I didn't have to borrow money. I made enough money to buy what I wanted, so I became debt-free. Didn't owe money on a house or cars or anything. And before that, I had like an 825. Within about 2 years, it slipped to 525. I had a bad slave score because I made too much money.
Now imagine that score not allowing you to fly to your conferences.
Yes. And it also affects dating services. It affects job interviews. I have to go through a background check every 6 months in my line of work. And if they find a bad credit score, they ask me questions about it in my job interview.
See, I don't think that should be allowed. I think that there's certain parts of people's lives that should remain private, and you just don't have a right to go in there. And, the technology that China's using to implement this is really very scary, guys. I mean, I'm not a fearmonger, and I'm not sitting here trying to make everybody afraid, but we have to get our heads out of the sands. We're not ostriches, and we need to see what's going on and be realistic about it, because it is policies like what we have going on. It is social dynamics and warfare, really social warfare, what we have going on. And we're not really clear on what's really going on. You talk about 5G and how bad it is, but 5G is part of the technology that allows this system to run. In China, there are certain screens, you can find this online, where people are on the video, public areas, walking down the street, and they have little squares above their head that gives basic information for whoever is watching.
Wow.
Okay, so
who's watching?
Who's watching? It is the question.
100,000 people walking down the sidewalk. Who's watching?
And anything attached to a Wi-Fi signal can be hacked. So we have thermostats in our homes now that somehow need a camera and a microphone and a Wi-Fi signal. Why do you need a camera and a microphone in a thermostat? Okay.
Well, you might be abusing it by keeping your house too cold.
Well, I just think it's a one way to get into your home, and it's one. These things are not conspiracy theories anymore. I used to talk about this on the air. You can have reverse camera activations in your cell phone. You just have to know where to look to find all this out. People can listen to your cell phone. You have Siri, you have Alexa, you have technology that has evolved out of this that now sits in your home and listens to you all day long. Okay, records your voice. Okay, does voice recognition, does facial recognition. How many pictures have you put on Facebook? Your facial recognition is already uploaded. You can be identified in any picture with any kind of program if they want to. And everybody goes, well, that's good because they can catch terrorists. Well, isn't it funny that ever since Donald Trump came into office, we don't hear much about terrorism anymore?
That's true. I know I've always said, and I've been saying this for 2 years, these people that say they hate Donald Trump in organizations like the DNC, they don't hate Donald Trump. they love Donald Trump. Donald Trump gave them millions of dollars over the years. And once Donald Trump's out of office, they're going to love him again. They don't hate Donald Trump. They hate us. They hate us. They've wanted to capture us or obfuscate us for a long, long time. And what Trump is doing is he's making us great again. He's making us recognized again. Look at the allergic reaction that they're having. They're openly saying Trump is destroying our government. He's destroying what we set up. Yeah, he is. That's why we sent him there, to tear all this stuff down and, protect us from what's been infiltrating us for, 36 years?
Well, I think they're all on the same side.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think
because
they have
there
been.
really hasn't been any president who has stood up and said, power to the people in the ways that should be, power to clean food systems, power to clean water, power to alternative energy, power to stop polluting our environment. I mean, the one thing I don't like about Trump is that his environmental policies are absolutely appalling, and they're allowing corporations to go in and do massive damage. But guess what? That's nothing new. It's nothing new. There's been other presidents and really haven't done much. I mean, Obama did some, but he allowed the green light on GMOs. The Dark Act came in when he was in office, and he signed off on the fact that we don't have to label GMOs in the food system. Now we have an epidemic of major diseases coming through, like what do you call that? Autism. People want to blame it on vaccines. I'm sure it's all part of it.
Crohn's
But
disease.
why can't we have a person in charge of our country that believes that we deserve these basic things?
Well, yeah, that needs, the idea that we need to be protected against corporate giants who are trying to, create a engineered food for us and then not give us the choice whether to buy it or not buy it. That's
Why
all
can't
we're
we
asking
shut
for.
Monsanto down and stop glyphosate from poisoning our food system? I mean, why can't they label on my boxes when I go to the grocery store, my cartons, what's in it? I actually saw a cereal line for the first time ever that said no glyphosate added. It's chemically it's labeled that there's none of this chemical in this product. That's the only food item I have seen in my grocery stores that even remotely addresses a massive issue. It's the same thing that happened with Teflon. Teflon was found out to be a major problem, but they didn't do anything about it, and they let it be sold on products across the globe. And now there's some documentaries on Netflix actually that really go into this very well. And now it's been determined that every blood sample from every part of the world that they have tested shows that we all have some form of Teflon inside of us. Well, what does that do to our biochemistry? How come nobody's talking about this? How come none of the candidates for the DNC? I watched the debates, and Marianne Williamson was the only one who mentioned our environmental policies and our food supply issues. Nobody else touched it with a 10-foot pole.
True.
Because why? Are they going to lose funding? Are they going to lose popularity? I mean, it's such a production, Brooks. It's like, I'm so sick of the production. Can't we just have real conversation, please? Can we have somebody real stand up? Joe Biden stands up there with his plastic smile, and he's the good-looking guy, and he's going to save us. And I don't want him as our president because he's old politics.
Yep.
Hillary Clinton was old politics.
Yep.
But there was so much bad going around in alternative media about Hillary Clinton. Some people thought she was a reptilian. Some people thought she was some kind of pedophilic psychopath. And there were a lot of really negative talking. Well, I think she got pissed off about it, and now she's trying to help shut it all down.
Well, it could be. Time will tell. I know Jeffrey Epstein got arrested Friday when he landed in New York and from France, and there's a hell of a big Rolodex there. I think if they can
that's the other problem. I mean, let's really talk about it. I mean, why are people attracted to kids in the first place? What is the psychosis in somebody's brain that makes them have sexual attraction to a child?
Well, I think
Nobody talks about that.
I think it's part of the oath and the covenant for the global syndicate, because what Jeffrey Epstein has is a library full of tapes that compromise every single person that's been to his island.
Oh, so you mean you can't become anybody important in the country unless you're videotaped so you can be blackmailed later on?
Correct.
I mean, that's what it is, right? I've heard that too. So if that's what it is, why aren't we going after the people that are videotaping it? Who are these people that are videotaping it? Let's shut it down. Shut it down.
Well, I mean,
Because
what about the
corruption
kids?
is allowed. Well,
I'm
the
not.
kids.
I'm not so concerned about the videotape as I am the kids. That's a lot of kids. And
If
that's
you
a-
shut it down, they won't need kids. If you shut it down, it will help the kids, don't you think? I mean, if you shut down the operations that are causing this to happen,
Sure.
I
Sure.
mean,
Well, I know that there are 100,000 sealed indictments, and maybe they had to get all the evidence in place. It took a couple years to do it. I don't know how many thousands of FBI agents have been working on it. But to get Jeffrey Epstein to fly from France to the United States knowing that he's a fugitive, and somehow they made him comfortable enough to fly here, and when he landed, they got him at the airport. Now, I know.
maybe his conscience got the best of him and he decided he should turn himself in.
Yeah, I doubt that.
But
Because
you know,
I think he's
one
on
thing that-
suicide
one
watch
thing
right
that-
now.
well, you know, I mean, it's karma. I mean, karma, how do you do that kind of deplorable things and not have to pay for it on some level, even if not a soul level?
Well,
Okay.
maybe so, but I hope that those 100,000 indictments include all these people that are involved in this.
I don't think it's
person.
going to. I don't think it's going to. You know why?
Why?
Because it's so in depth. It just goes so deep.
It does.
And you have massively powerful people in that circuit.
Sure.
Okay. Do you think they're all going to go down? You think they're all going to go down without a fight? You think they're all going to not, pull their little strings of power and control and manipulate?
I talk about that. I say, the animal is most dangerous when it's cornered. And you're right. I don't think they're going to go down without a fight. If it gets to the point where, well, I know what leaders have done in the past when they've been cornered, when it's been time that their name's going to go in the press in a bad way, they just call up Wars R Us. I mean, Clinton's bombed the hell out of Kosovo for 90 days and switched all the headlines to that war to get his name out of the papers.
Well, that's part of the problem too, is we have newspapers that are aligned with certain compartments of thought, okay, and they don't allow anything in that doesn't align with that. So we have probably, I think it's only 5 real companies that own the newspapers and the radio stations and the things of that sort that really get to people. Okay, I think it's 5 or 6. So, I mean, who's in charge of those? And who says which story goes to print? And who says, oh yeah, let's talk about that, right?
Well, yeah.
Alternative media does it. Alternative media does it.
Yeah, who writes that little line that everybody parrots all day long on the fake stream news? Who writes those lines at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning that every single news actor reads off the screen? Because they all say exactly the same phrase, and it's always a weird phrase like dangerous for our democracy or unstable, or some phrase that maybe 2 people out of 10,000 might share. But every single news actor across all the channels saying the same thing for days. It's who's writing that stuff?
It's almost like puppets, right? And by the way, these newscasters get paid a lot of money. Some of the better and bigger known ones get paid millions of dollars.
Wow.
So this is not chump change. This is not, okay, I'm going to jeopardize my $1 million paycheck and say what I really think kind of stations. These are prompters, scripted shows.
Yeah.
Somebody's written your script. It's going down the TV prompter, and you're watching it. And you got to make it. You got to sell it to the public, and you better sell it well, or we can replace you with some other pretty face or some other, happy to look at kind of person. And on we go, moving forward. So I think that we have to first really remember that it's all hoodwink. You're being hoodwinked. You're being hoodwinked by your headlines, which are oftentimes very misleading, and most people don't even click on the links to actually read the full article, let alone notice the date it was published.
Yeah.
So when you go through your news feed on Facebook and you go, oh, that jerk Trump, he did it again, but you haven't even read You haven't even clicked on it. You haven't read it. You haven't researched what source it's coming from. People really have forgotten how to source check.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's so important because you're being hoodwinked. Every time you're online, you have an opportunity to be scammed and conned. And you have to be really careful with your own mind. Your own opinion is valuable. Your own perspective is valuable. You don't have to think like all the herds in your front yard. I mean, it's like, come on, guys. You're not a sheep. This is what we've all been talking about for years and years and years and years. Wake up, wake up. We're all ascending, right? We're all one. No.
That's why we want
no.
people. That's why we want people to listen to Truth Frequency and to BBS Radio and Conscious Life Radio, Conscious Media Network, and all these other networks, and
Well,
even
as long as you can access them, you'll be fine.
right. And there are, I mean, thousands and thousands of independents out there with YouTubes and We Go One, We Go All, and
YouTube is sweeping those opinions off. So we're watching this. There is a tremendous possibility. But you're better off if you have your own server and you can build your own network and you can do your own security and you can keep the hackers out of your systems. Good luck with that. And if you can do all that, then good for you. And please keep doing it. And please keep having these people on to talk about this stuff. And the listeners are so important because they're getting a different story than what they're being spoon-fed through the machine.
well, and that's what happens. But if we can keep the electorate informed and keep their the information that they have pure enough, then they can make decisions for themselves. We're not trying to tell you what to think. What we're trying to do is open your mind so that you can't be told what to think.
Well, I think that's what alternative media did for a very long time, and I think it changed the world. I think people woke up to the point where they were able to say, well, wait a minute, that makes more sense than the official story. And then they actually had a crack in consciousness, and it opened their minds up and enabled them to see through the veil.
Well, we
Okay,
call that
that's
red
the
pilling.
problem. Well, that's the
They're
problem.
red-pilled from the
Yeah,
Matrix.
maybe, but seriously, I mean, I'm being serious here. It's like people have had a period of growth through the last decade or so, and I think that's why it's such an emergency to the people in charge to shut it down, because the election wasn't able to happen the way they wanted Clinton in office. Clinton was supposed to be in office. Everybody thought, well, we'll just run the script the way we always do, and we'll put her in the show.
Sure. And then none of this would have been discovered. None of it would have been investigated. None of the voter fraud or the tech giants. Everything would have gone smoothly. They would have taken it over as a utility. 6 guys would be running virtually all the content that you see here, and they would regulate what you post. No one would ever see it if you posted something that they didn't like. And George Orwell's reality would be here. But I really think we still have the wild, wild west. I think that there is a possibility that Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and even Snapchat could go broke. They think they're indestructible. They think they can run with that pile of cash they have in the bank forever. But without us, they're nothing.
Well, you tell that to the younger generations who can't get off it. Okay, I mean, I think the school shootings have all been a reason to put camera systems and that facial recognition technology into schools when they're young. And then as they grow, they're filmed, their facial changes are recorded. I mean, we're watching the implementation of not only a digital empire, but the digital empire. And it's not about our generations. It's about the younger generations who are growing up with screens in their face. Did you know that when you look at a cell phone, your eyes go up and down as you scroll through things usually, When you read a book, your eyes go left to right. Does anybody know what that does to the brain?
No.
It would be an interesting question to find out.
Well, yeah, and the screen is a lot smaller, too, so your eye can take in the whole cell phone all at one time. You don't really have to scan. You can just take
Well, it's more the
a snapshot
movement.
of it.
It's the movement of the eyeball literally going up and down versus left to right.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I highly suggest people research it.
Chinese writing is up and down.
True. So there's a neurological effect that actually happens. It's, I'm not an expert in it. I've read it. I've seen some interesting things on it. It's an interesting topic to look into. But anyway, besides that, you have kids that are not only becoming dependent on the social aspect of
20
the
seconds,
digital
we're going to take a
age.
break. So
Okay.
we'll,
I'll say that.
we've got another hour. We got lots more to talk about. Don't go away. YouTubers, hang in there. We'll be right back after this. More X Squared Radio. Hillary Ramo, my guest. Don't go away. Studio is on its own for about 2.5 minutes, so we're
Hi, YouTubers.
I like this because it's so interactive. You look at the chat and it's just going up and going up, and people are adding comments. And
I can't see it. What are they saying?
I'd have to put my glasses on, and I don't want to.
Well, I hope we're stirring some good conversation, because it's important stuff, and nobody likes to talk about it because they consider it all dark and negative, and really it's not. It's actually very enlightening. It's enlightening to take a look into this with a very stable self. You go in, you take a look, you do some critical thinking, you resonate with what resonates with you. You take what resonates with you and leave the rest. I mean, you don't have to take it all in and spend your whole vacation time sitting there reading all this stuff and getting all upset about it. But you need to know, and you need to have these conversations with your friends and family and your kids and the people that are close to you in your real life, because if you don't remind your children that there is a real life, okay, they're going to sit in their rooms playing video games all day with all their social circles because they can, and they're going to be online doing their thing, and they have to remember it's not necessarily real life. They have to get off, and it's becoming more and more and more addictive, and it's built that way.
It is. I mean, I myself, I don't think I ever leave the house without my phone in my pocket. And as I said, this is an upgrade to me. The next generation, they're hardwired to it. They wouldn't think of leaving the house without it.
Well, it's a great way to track people, too. I mean, your location dings off every street light and all kinds of stuff. So, I mean, you really have to be aware that it's kind of like a personal tracking device. It's kind of like a barcode that's been put on your hand, because your location tells agencies and other government agencies where you are.
Well, in this next segment, if you want to, I want to talk a little bit about artificial intelligence. I think this is kind of a brave new world, but if artificial intelligence gets away from their controllers, their creators, where do you think this is going to go? We're going to come back in about 30 seconds.
Okay.
It's a big question. I have friends, I have associates, Elon Musk and others, who think AI is a big scary thing. It's we saw Sophia introduced to the internet in November of 2017. We saw, Facebook's AI get away from them, and it started creating its own language, and they finally had to unplug it. I mean, there's some strange things. So we'll come back here in about 10 seconds. Here we go.
We are TFR.
My fading destiny is all I need to prevail. Truth Frequency Radio.
Okay, welcome back. We're halfway through Earth Explorers. My guest tonight, Hillary Ramo. We have been talking about the tech giants, the digital universe that we live in, this digital cloak that we wear everywhere we go, and its ability to track us, to profile us, to collect enough information about us, almost to predict what we're going to do. Which brings us to the next question, which is, who's watching all of these little squares above our heads with our little profile information? Who cares what green beans we eat or what brand of gasoline we buy or whether we eat hot dogs or we're vegetarians? We're going to talk about artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is supposedly a computer mind, not a computer brain, but a computer mind that can think so fast and cover so many bases at one time simultaneously, really to mimic the ability of 10 or 50 or 100,000 human brains all at one time. You know, I thought for a while maybe we should have each state prepare its own artificial intelligence and send it to Washington, and that would be our Congress. Why, they'd be up 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You wouldn't have to worry about them lying or dating or doing drugs or playing golf. They could answer all the emails simultaneously, answer all the telephone calls from every constituent simultaneously, and you wouldn't even have to pay them a salary. However, we think about how, we've watched movies and we've read books about what happens when we turn all the complexities of currency and energy and food production and the movement of people and goods around the world over to an artificial intelligence. Something we think can handle all that so we human creators can go to the next level. Well, Hillary and I are going to go into this half hour about what the risk is with artificial intelligence and maybe what the benefits are. What do you think, Hillary?
Sure. Let's do it. I think we're headed towards a digital dictatorship, to be honest with you. And if certain people had their way, we'd already be there. So, eventually technology, think about how much it's advanced just within a short period of time. I can still remember, I'm 46 years old, so I can still remember, when I was young, I had a phone hardwired onto the wall, the cord would stretch just so far, I had a busy signal, remember doing emergency interruptions, things of that sort, before pagers, before cell phones, before everything. You talked about landlines before. I have to tell you, where I live, I am not physically able to have a landline put in. It has to be attached to a Wi-Fi.
No way.
So that's already been taken out where I live. You cannot put a hardline landline in. You have to be connected. I have a phone that looks like an old-fashioned phone that has a cord and links to the wall, but it will only run on a Wi-Fi channel.
So it's voice over IP.
Basically, yeah. So, everybody who thinks they have a hard line put in, I guarantee you they probably don't. And everything that has a Wi-Fi signal has the potential to be hacked into, listened into, recorded properly. Huge databases have been built over the last decade especially. For what? We're not quite sure. Is it to sell someone a better product? I'm sure. Marketing is a big part of it, trying to figure out what everybody wants to buy and makes lots of money. It's really efficient for that. But on the other hand, you also have an all-seeing eye that can see you whenever, wherever, through whatever back way camera they can get into your house, and now the options are many. You have a lot of things that are infiltrating to set up for smart cities. And the 5G technology really is all about smart cities. Now, some of it can manage lighting, your street lights, make it more efficient. They can manage water distribution. They can manage, if you need to get a medical file from point A to point B across the country, it can make that much easier. But, it was Hillary Clinton that put our health files onto digital records, made it all digital, and now it gets hacked. it gets hacked, ransoms are asked for. I mean, it's not safe. It's not safe. Your personal information is just not safe. And the technology has advanced to the point where you can literally have a test done. Say you have an MRI done and you're looking for maybe a tumor in your chest. Okay. There is the ability to go in and either erase that before the doctor sees it, or put something there that's not there before the doctor sees it. This is available online. You can read it, mainstream media. So I mean, it's really kind of like the wild, wild west, but scarier. And again, I'm not trying to fearmonger, but I mean, these are realities. I mean, these are realities we have to face. We have to deal with. Who's going to take care of us in this world? You think Trump's going to?
I was on a panel at one of these conferences, and it was about artificial intelligence, and I think it was David Farman was going on and on about AI and how it's scary and going to take over everything. And I said, I'm not really afraid of artificial intelligence, because all I have to say is, hey, artificial intelligence, why don't you come on over here? Oh, what's the matter? Does your USB cord not stretch that far? I can turn my phone off. I can grab my motorcycle that doesn't even have fuel injection on it, and I can ride away, and they can't follow me. There's nothing they can do about it. If I don't talk, if I don't connect, if I don't log on, they have no idea who I am or where I am or what I'm doing. If I buy with cash, I disappear, just like 11 million people that, well, actually, I call them the bankless millions. They don't have bank accounts. They work for cash. They spend cash. They buy their cars cash, their food cash, pay their rent cash. We don't know who they are. We don't know where they work. They're completely anonymous in our country.
Well, I don't think that's true. And here's why. Because even though you get on your motorcycle and you leave your phone at home and you drive out with a pocket full of cash, you have cameras everywhere. Okay. And Edward Snowden warned us about this. He warned us about the system 8 years ago. How many years ago? Lots of years ago. And what kind of progression has it made? I mean, he's warned us about a system that is kind of like an all-seeing system. And so if they want to find you, they can read your license plate as you go through the traffic lights. There's license plate reading technology at pretty much at every red light you stop at. And you don't have to have your phone on you for them to figure out who you are. And you walk into a corner store and you buy a soda and a sandwich, and out you walk. Well, you've just made that video camera, and you've made every video camera along the way. So the system is capable of tracking you without your phone. And it's not that we need to worry about it. We just need to be aware of it. And you need to be aware that, you know what, this is the way it is. And how are we going to stop it? I don't know. But again, you go back to China and you look at their technology and how they've implemented it. And it really is kind of a test run for the rest of the world.
Well, we're watching the protests in Hong Kong, and a lot of people, even that listen to this program, don't really know what those are all about. For about 100 years, Hong Kong was kind of a sovereign country. Yes, it was part of China, but it has the largest per capita population of billionaires on the planet. Hong Kong is kind of a vertical empire. You can live your entire life in a few blocks in Hong Kong. And then what happened is it reverted over to Chinese rule. Well, now that it's under Chinese rule, what they want to be able to do is extradite, that is to say, pick people out of Hong Kong and ship them to mainland China who are socially disruptive. And so what's happened is millions of people have hit the streets in Hong Kong wearing goggles and different things to obscure their identity. And they have said, you're not going to extradite anybody from Hong Kong. But I guarantee you that China's going to wait them out. And we're going to see that happen. And you know what? We're going to demand it. Look what happened just a few days ago in Chicago. 30 people were killed, or 30 people shot, 4 of them dead. What Chicago wants to do is they want to stop those shootings. And Chicago might even be like a model city for them to try one of these high-tech technologies, something that can track guns or track facial recognition and find these people and take drastic action. But I think this is where we're going.
Well, I think we are too. I think you're right. And I did a show back in 2016 with Chad Marlowe, who's the head counsel of the ACLU for data privacy. And this show transcript is in my book. You can go on Amazon or wherever you like and find the book and read it. And he talked to me about LED lights.
Oh, yeah.
And LED lights come equipped with spy technology. They can be turned on or off at whatever discretion. And I said, LED lights are spy technology? Are you kidding me? He goes, no. And they were fighting it at the time. They were doing some litigation around it. And my city just had a big news announcement that they ordered 10,000 new LED lights for all public spaces. And he said that public spaces that have LED lights have the camera technology. So you might think you're looking at a camera on a wall that, you kind of hide your face or you just kind of, avoid, and therefore you're safe. But in reality, LED lights capture your facial recognition and you can be caught that way. So, and I also said to him, I said, well, LED lights were kind of marketed as a progressive way to honor the earth and fight climate change.
Yeah,
And,
they outlawed the
every
incandescent
house
light.
should have it. And everybody ran out to Home Depot or your local store and bought all LED lights and changed all their light bulbs and said, see, I'm a better person now, guilt trip ridden, gone. Okay, I'm helping to save the world. I've changed all my light bulbs. Well, I don't know if that was necessarily true. I mean, maybe your electricity bill goes down a few dollars, yes, but Chad Marlowe, who's the head counsel of the ACLU for data privacy, admitted online to me, and it's in my transcript in my book, that this system, this LED light system, can be turned on in homes. Okay, so if you buy an LED light that has spy technology already in it, and you put it into your office or you put it into your bedroom, that can be accessed from an outside source. How ridiculous is that?
Now, I have an LED light in this office, but it's behind a shade. It's in a window shade. So
Well, they're bright.
it can't see into the room. It can only see the inside of the lampshade.
Well, that's you, Brooks. But I mean, how many people have most of their LED lights behind curtains? I mean, it's really something that we've kind of been hoodwinked over. And I think that we have to ask our leadership, why are they letting this kind of invasive technology come into our lives? Do they really need to know what's going on in our kitchen or our bedroom or our office? I mean, come on.
No, they don't. But, I mean, people complain about smart meters. I used to work for the company that makes the smart meters, and the Zigbee board that's inside that broadcasts your power usage to the power companies. And, we knew why they were doing it, because the power companies wanted to be able to match the power generation with the power demand, almost hour by hour. It could save, a company millions of dollars a month. But then they started coming out with the smart chip inside of appliances like dryers and water heaters and heat pumps and things like that, so that if the power company needed to cut back on usage for a couple of hours in order to catch up, burn more coal or more natural gas or make more steam with the nuclear power plant, spin the turbines up, they could turn off, say, 10,000 heat pumps, and they could save that amount of money. They could access the heat pumps through the address in the chip that controls the board of the heat pump. Now,
Well, it's like a double-edged sword. I mean, there's some good things about this, and there's some bad things about this. And is it worth it? Is it worth it?
You remember a show, it was a movie that was on years ago. It had Sandra Bullock, and it was called The Net. And it was where she had become a kind of political risk to, like, in that movie they called it the powers that be, and they simply just disconnected her debit card so she could not get any money, and her, she had a really rough time because she was like exiled from the web, so she didn't really exist she couldn't eat, she couldn't drive anywhere, she couldn't get gas, and it was kind of a conspiracy theorist movie. But now we have these, I call them the global syndicate, which is really a global concern of, I think, private individuals who, and I don't know why, but they want to control the world. And the only way they can control the world is to control the political speech, to control the opposition. Now, you can call any speech that disagrees with you hate speech, and then you can take action against it, and the media giants are doing that right now. But what if they could go beyond that? What if they could say, not only is this person a hateful speaker, but we're going to take their hateful money and we're going to make sure that they can't drive their hateful car or go to their hateful job or take care of their hateful children. We're going to digitally exile them.
Well, I call that the digital prison, and I think that movie was a really good example of it. And if you haven't heard from it, guys, you should go watch it again and really get up to speed, because I think it was very insightful to what was coming at the time, or what was already really being done. And if you get involved with the wrong people, or you do something that pisses somebody off somewhere and they don't want your voice to be heard, you're like a switch. They can just shut you off. That's one thing. But when they start cutting off your credit cards or interrupting your computer systems or shutting down your computer systems, which is very easy to do, and you start to have these problems, and then everything is online now. Think about it. Your IRS is online, your health records are online, your kids' financial records are online because they have to go to school and you have to prove income. Everything you do is online.
Yeah, our banking. I mean, we do all our banking online.
Yeah, banking. You can shop for groceries online. I mean, you can do everything online now. Online has become the way to live. I mean, really, we're watching it consume everyone. So when you're trained and groomed to do everything online and accept that as reality, then you are consumed into the digital matrix. And once you're in the digital matrix, you are caught there. It's like a web. Okay. And your entire life is entangled in it. All of your work is done on the computer, whether you work at home or you work for a company, most of it is most likely computerized. And if somebody gets into things, or what about your phone? Let's talk about your phone for a minute. Let's talk about your text messages. Let's talk about technology that can go in and change your text messages, or send a text message to somebody on your contact list that you didn't compose. And maybe that text message, is it nice? Is it nice? It can ruin a relationship. It can ruin a work contact. It can make people shun other people, make them just not ever talk to them again. And who's going to question that you didn't send a text? See, most people don't know that the technology exists to be able to do that. Most people don't know that your text messaging apps especially are synced. They're synced a lot. You can sometimes see the message pop up depending on what app you're using. And who's syncing it? What are they syncing it to? What are they comparing it to? Police authorities can access your emails, your text messaging, your call logs, really without even talking to you. So I mean, you have a culture that has been bred by what we've watched over the last few years. There's a lot of division. There's a lot of polarized opinions. People segregating themselves, not talking to other people because certain believe what they believe, or look at what Trump has really done. I mean, he's really created a massive divide among people. Oh, you're not a spiritual person because you don't hate Trump. I actually had somebody say that to me once. I said, well, it's not that I don't hate Trump. It's not that I don't hate Trump. I just don't see hating anyone as a spiritual thing. Right. So the whole comment was idiotic. Actually, it was really just. But that's the mentality of what we're dealing with. I mean, how many friends have unfriended you guys because you have different opinions of what's going on in the political arena? Half. I mean, it's created massive pockets of people, and you don't think that's not being tracked?
Well,
you don't think that?
I do actually think it is a divide. I wrote a book about it called The Grand Division.
Mm-hmm.
And it is prophesied that what would happen in the last days is that people would be separated based on light or darkness. They would have a very high frequency or they'd have a low frequency. And they would be judging themselves. They make themselves higher, they make themselves low. But it says in the scriptures that the light will be present in the darkness, and the darkness shall comprehendeth it not. Well, that's a division. Now, for a long, long time, we kind of all lived together and didn't really know. But now what we're beginning to see is this choice. Now, wait a minute. We don't want to be a socialist country. We want to be a republic. Well, now what's happened is the division is happening. People are choosing. I want to be a socialist. I want to live in a republic. And the division is occurring. And there's no getting around that. It's been prophesied. It's going to happen. People are going to separate based on these ideals. And the reason I wrote the book is because in times past, what happens is when people, as a people, choose more wickedness than righteousness, Earth has a way, because we have a symbiotic relationship with the planet, it has a way of rising up and spanking us. It wipes us out with a hurricane or a tsunami or a volcano or some kind of calamity, a fire. But now there's 7 billion of us. We have this enormous consciousness signature here on this planet. And about half of us are one way and half of us are another way, and the earth cannot decide whether to wipe us out or whether to give us all of its bounty. And
but I don't know. I mean, how does the earth, that's a big statement, because I hear this a lot. The earth is mad at us. The earth is judging us for our actions. Well, I think the earth is just turning whatever we do. Okay. And the cycles that we're looking at are so much longer and bigger than us that it's almost egotistically psychopathic to think otherwise. Because how do we account for the cycles of the earth? Well, we're not really taught them, first of all. We are kind of, given an improper education, especially here in the States. I mean, we're really not even taught most of the things we really need to know. Our doctors are not even taught about the endocannabinoid system, which cannabis helps to balance. They're not even taught the system exists in medical school. I just did a show last week with Dr. Yui Blushing, and we were talking about this, and he revealed this on my show, and I just couldn't believe it. I said that the doctors that go through medical school are not taught about this particular system. So I think it's ignorance in a lot of our parts. We don't really understand. How can we claim climate change if we don't even know the massive cycles of the planet itself? The rings on Saturn are starting to disintegrate. I just read this article online, and I fact-checked the source. And so these rings are disintegrating, and so we have a galactic happening going on. Well, what about those cycles? What about the changing cycles of our sun? Our sun has a finite amount of life. It has a death cycle. So where are we at in that death cycle? Are we being told the truth? I mean, you have big, huge, ridiculously rich people who are doing these geoengineering programs where they put these nanoparticles into the sky to help reflect the light. I didn't vote for anybody to go reflect my light. I didn't vote for anybody to spray these reflective nanoparticles in my oceans and in my sky.
True.
Okay, so what effect is that having on the weather and the climate?
Well,
the poles are shifting. Poles are shifting.
We're in solar cycle 24, obviously, and most people know this. It's a very quiet cycle, not many solar flares, not many coronal mass ejections, and as such, our atmosphere is shrinking. It's shrunk by several miles, which means that we're losing more heat to space because we don't have as big an insulative blanket around us as we did. Right. With the sun not putting out enough particles to replenish our atmosphere, we're probably heading for an ice age. We're probably heading for an ice age until
I just think that we probably are, and I just think that we're so unprepared and unschooled on the realities of these cycles. I mean, if you go back to ancient history and you look at the megalithic sites, which so many wonderful people do great research on, and you take a look at how they marked the solstices and equinoxes and the alignment with the sun and all of this, why would they leave that on the rocks? Well, it's so that it can be tracked, and because it changes, and once it starts to change, you need to pay attention.
Right.
Because these people weren't attached to their screens, and they weren't attached to their, their living rooms and their televisions and their dramatic stories. They were outside. They were growing their food.
They
They
were
were
attached to the
living.
cycles of the
Yeah.
sun.
So I'm a believer in the holistic human system. So the holistic human system is attached to the cycles of the earth, and we get these feelings, these intuitive feelings. I've been laughed at a lot of times for even talking about it, but I still talk about it because it's true and it's important to understand, right? So I think that people are capable of tuning in, and if they spend enough time tuning in, they can start to feel, a bird feels when it's time to migrate.
Sure.
Animals feel that, right? So I think we do too, and I think we've lost that skill of understanding what and when we should do this.
Well, we have
So
about
I
10
mean,
seconds left in this segment. We got another half-hour segment. My guest tonight, Hillary Ramo. I promise the next segment is going to be amazing. We're going to pull this all together. We'll see you right after this. Don't go away. Okay, we're out. We're just YouTube only now. We're
hi, YouTubers.
so wonderful out there. All these different media. I actually tried to do the TFR live stream, and then the YouTube stream and a Facebook live all at the same time. I have the technology to do it. I just couldn't keep up with all of the comments that were coming in and the questions that were coming in. So we never really kind of got to the AI behemoth that may be coming, because I actually think that the people that put the AI in place, and this is Elon's big fear, is that they're actually going to lose control of the AI, and they're going to not get what they wanted. They want to control all of us, but then they're going to find themselves controlled, because the AI is going to be smart enough to figure out that what they're doing is actually bad for humanity and maybe bad for sustainability, and so they're going to take actions otherwise.
Yeah.
But in this hour, this last segment, I want to talk about, because this is something that really where the rubber meets the road here. We are shifting populations around the planet with different forces, and I've stepped back from this maybe 20,000 miles, looking back at the earth and saying, why are we moving all these people around? Why do we move all these people out of Syria and out of Guatemala and Honduras and El Salvador? Why are we moving all these people away from these areas that are right around the equator? And I thought to myself, well, what if we do go into this ice age and the farm belts move 300 miles closer to the equator? It means that the only real high productive farmable land is going to be about 500 miles on either side of the equator. And that's
that's what I mean. That's what I was talking about in the last segment. It's like it kind of is relevant to the AI question, because the AI can detect these cycle changes and can predict where climate change effects will happen. I mean, when the oceans do rise, the maps of projected coastline is very clear, and it's just a matter of maybe relocating these people. Syria, I think, is a totally different subject. I think Israel is just trying to grow its country across the Middle East and wipe out its competition so that it can take over the oil fields. I mean, I really think it's pretty much that simple, but not simple. And we're just being used. The United States is just being used as the bulldog police agents to go in and do this. And I'm really proud of Trump for not going to war with Iran when that tanker got hit. And I think he did the right thing. And he was very public about it. And he said, 100-something lives would have been lost, and it wasn't worth what they had shot down. They had shot down an unmanned drone. And so I think this
we're coming back in.
Okay.
Coming back in.
Bye, YouTubers.
Truth Frequency Radio.
back live on Truth Frequency Radio Network, TFRlive.com. We're always free, always live. Our phone number tonight is 213-233-3998. We're in the final segment with Hillary Ramo, my guest. So far, the comments on YouTube and on my text and on the chat have been brilliant. I'm trying to steer along that way. We almost got into the artificial intelligence in the direction I thought it was going to go. So I'm going to try to redirect this a little bit back because some of my colleagues, Elon and others, believe that if the AI is created and it's turned loose, that is to say, it's enters the internet and begins to take over everything from oil production to energy redistribution, movement of people, movement of information, and movement of money, that the global syndicate is going to lose control and they're not going to get the world that they thought they were going to get. They're going to get the one the AI thinks is most logical. And we kind of backed away while Truth Frequency was on break. We backed away about 20,000 miles out into space while you weren't looking. And we looked back at Earth and we realized that if there is an ice age coming, and that is to say, if the farm belts move 300 miles closer to the equator, which is what a lot of scientists are saying right now, in the next 20 to 50 years, the food production area is going to be about 400 or 500 miles on either side of the equator. And that is exactly the area along a very narrow landmass, if you look at our planet, that people are being vacated from Honduras and Guatemala and El Salvador and other countries around the world. Populations are being moved out of these areas. And one other thing I want to bring into this algorithm as we discuss this half hour is the advent, the development, and the runaway presence of cryptocurrencies. Who is creating all these currencies and why the necessity for all these rapidly changing, wildly swinging currencies? What do you think, Hillary?
You ready?
Yeah.
So I had the privilege of working with Stuart Trusty, who was the head technologist for Alibaba in the East. And I was on his team when he started his new business, WorldBit. I got into Bitcoin and investing Bitcoin in 2014. I did an interview with Stuart. His interview is in my book. And we talked about this. And I asked him that way back before Bitcoin even bloomed into its highest potential there. And I was watching the contracts, the mining contracts, learning how to do that, so on and so forth. So I was kind of in that, watching it, doing it, participating in it. And really, I was quite surprised at how quickly it took off. But the thing is that what cryptocurrency allows is it allows a transaction to happen between two people without a third party bank. So what it does is it takes away the banking system. The original intention of cryptocurrency really was to get rid of the banking system as it is now. Now,
Sure.
If you think that the banking systems are going to let that happen and just roll over and say, okay, no. So what they did was they took the best parts of this technology and they put it into place for themselves, which is really the blockchain technology. The blockchain technology is, in kind of a simple way to put it, it's a ledger. So anything that can be ledgered can be used within the blockchain system. So the blockchain system is really the kind of treasure that came out of this for the banking system, because what it does is it allows a ledger system that does not have any discrepancies. So that's pretty bad for people who count on corruption,
Sure.
who do things of that sort. So it's a problem for some. For other people, it brings accountability in. It's useful for certain things. Now imagine your Facebook feed is a ledger. So if they put blockchain technology into social media platforms, then what they're doing is they're creating a dictionary of your posts, your thoughts, the things that you find valuable to put on your Facebook page or your Twitter page or whatever. And it becomes like a really strong, powerful way to prove what you did. So they've taken blockchain technology and they've implemented it into a lot of their systems, and they will use it going forward. And you will see more and more about that. But cryptocurrency was too much of the wild, wild west for them. And to implement one kind of cryptocurrency across the planet would be really difficult because you have way too many obstacles in order to do that. Singapore is the one country where a lot of the laws are easiest to do when you create cryptocurrencies. And then once Bitcoin took off, well, then everybody wanted to create a cryptocurrency and everybody wanted to be Bitcoin and everybody wanted to make money. And what was happening was people were investing into cryptocurrency and making lots of money. And suddenly you have people who didn't have access to the privileged world suddenly have access to the privileged world because they're making incredible returns on their investments fast.
Well, it's because people were getting in. There are now over 1,200 cryptocurrencies, by the way. You can get in on the ground floor, ride it very quickly to the 50th floor, get off, and let the elevator go on up, which means you sell out. You convert back into dollars, drop back to the ground floor, and wait for either that cryptocurrency to fall again or get on another cryptocurrency and climb the 50 stories again.
Or have a portfolio with several cryptocurrencies that are being successful. So cryptocurrency consulting is something I did for a little while just based on what I had learned. And I saw something happen in the industry, and I saw something happen in alternative media. Alternative media started to demonize the whole process and say cryptocurrencies are, Big Brother coming in. And maybe some of that is true because what the big banks did do is they pretty much created a propaganda machine that made everybody afraid, and everybody got out and everybody pulled their money out, and suddenly Bitcoin became way down.
Sure.
People lost a lot of money if you didn't take it out before it crashed. And when it did crash, it has never gone back up to the successes that it had at that one point. So what we have, and if you add AI to this technology, which probably would work if you got a cryptocurrency that was universally used, but then we're talking globalism, and globalism is not so popular with a lot of people for good reason.
Well, right. And let's just look at Bitcoin itself, one of 1,200 cryptocurrencies. There was a world-renowned hacker with McGaffrey who tried to break into and hack into the Bitcoin system just to see if it could be done. At first, he thought, well, this is going to be easy. Look at all these markers. So they went in, and then it got more complex. Every single time it looked like they were going to break into it, there was a message waiting for them. And it became evident that Bitcoin was, if not created by AI, had been taken over by AI very early on. And one of the things that they did is they let Bitcoin get very high, and then the original investors, the people that actually originally put the cash into Bitcoin to get it started, they cashed out. They became mega rich, and they left. And then AI brought the price back down. Mm-hmm. And my theory is that artificial intelligence is using cryptocurrency to buy server space and supply that server space with power. They're the ones making the Bitcoin or the cryptocurrencies go up and down. And they're letting humans take the ride. But I think they've created their own currency.
Yeah, well, there's only so much Bitcoin you can mine. Sure. And the mines are really, really, they use a lot of energy. They're most of them are hidden. You don't know where they are because the security is so tight. But see, the thing is that if you learn to mine, you make more money in it than you do if you're just an investor. So people, it was kind of the cool thing to do, let's invest in cryptocurrency and make some money. People paid for their kids' weddings that way, put their kids through college. I mean, there was things going on that real people needed. So if you look at the blue collar working class, okay, and you think about what they need, and they're stuck paycheck to paycheck to paycheck, and suddenly they make $20,000 with a $2,000 investment. Wow, right? It's like a bonus party time, right? We're going to go out and we're going to spend it. We're going to put it into the economy. We're going to do it. So in that way, it's good. I think it really gives people an opportunity to step out of their day-to-day life and get a chance to get ahead, because working hourly and even if salary is it's limiting, and it keeps people suppressed.
Sure.
The minute that you give people access to funds that they normally don't have access to. Now, let's say you take that $20,000 and you start your very own network of radio stations, and you put people on that radio station that have really good things to say, and you amount millions of listeners and so on and so forth. So that might be a little dangerous to the system, and they might not want you to make that much money so you can do that. And they want you back in your paycheck to paycheck stance, and they are very happy with you right there. And thank you very much.
Well, I mean, look
So
what
let's
happened.
crash it.
Look what happened in 1928. The middle class was coming on strong. You could almost do no wrong. Every investment was a good investment. The middle class was coming of age, and the globalists didn't like that. So they crashed the money supply and destroyed the middle class in 1929. The middle class disappeared. You had the very poor and you had the very rich. And the very rich came back in and bought up city blocks, railroads, utilities, steamships. They bought the world. And now what we have is the middle class coming on strong again. But what happened was the banking regulations changed. They put Dodd-Frank in place, which effectively made it illegal for banks to loan money to any business that has less than a 2-year of contiguous profits, which immediately it spaced every single startup in America. We're now at the lowest level of business startups in America that we've been at since the year 1675. It is an absolute tragedy. Nobody can start a business of any size in the United States right now because there's no money. All the money has been extracted into the central banks. And the central banks are not letting people access that money to start up a manufacturing plant or start up a technology plant or a lab. You can't do any of that. Only the people that are already in business with 2 years of contiguous profits can even access the banks by law. So cryptocurrencies come along, blockchain technologies come along, and they show promise that maybe some of these entrepreneurs, and there's no shortage of entrepreneurs or people willing to work 100 or 2 or 120 hours a week to get a business going in the United States anyway, but they don't have access to capital. Maybe cryptocurrencies give that access to capital. But so far, and I have my finger very, very close to the pulse on this in my business, that's not happening. Business startups are still starving to death in the United States.
Well, I think people with the right ideas need to be able to access funds, and they need to be able to access the system, but it's just not that simple. And cryptocurrencies, as far as I'm concerned, have crashed. Okay. I mean, we might have 1,200 out there, but that's because everybody is trying to make the one that's going to mimic Bitcoin. And Bitcoin really did something. And I think we would benefit a lot from studying that effect. And I think that, what we also have to remember is that Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies did allow that door to open briefly where we could say goodbye to the general banking system, but people really had a massive reaction to it. It's kind of like Trump. Like, they had a massive reaction to cryptocurrencies. I saw all over alternative media where people were saying it was this, it was that. They were demonizing it. They were shooting it down left and right. People got really mad at me because of how I was talking about it. And, you have to explore how it came to be. I did an interesting interview with Dr. David Lewis Anderson, who had a private company that was researching time travel. Now, I lose a lot of people right there. Time travel, oh my God. But I know that you have listeners they're going to get this. Now,
And
David
readers.
and readers. And so Dr. Anderson was doing the alternative media circuit around 2010. I was one of his last interviews. I still get contacted today asking if I know where he is, and I don't, but he disappeared. And on my show, he talked about he was going into the government sector. So his research was being absorbed into the government sector. But one thing he said to me, and this transcript is in my book, you can read it. One thing he said to me was, the only thing that they have been able to send through time, back in time, is data. Now, this was 2010. Now, this is an interesting thought. Maybe it sounds like I'm talking about an episode of Stranger Things. I don't know. But if you think about how much data has been farmed since 2010,
Wow.
and how data obsessed we are, and how much data everything is, if you can send data back in time, which, by the way, operates with a different physics. So if you send data back in time and all time exists simultaneously, which is a proposed theory, what does that mean then for the implications of militarized data farming to send back in time? Send back in time to what? So when I see people suddenly forgetting things and not really remembering, content that was presented by legitimate sources and people doing good research, and it had been out there all over the internet, right? I wonder about the effects of sending data back in time. It's a really interesting, we probably could do another show on it, but it's a really interesting thing to ponder and research. And it kind of takes you onto the fringe of things, but not really, because the people who know that this kind of experimental stuff, technology exists, we know pretty much that most hidden technology is about 50 to 75 years ahead of our time and is not available in the public sector. And I know all this because I've done the research and I've interviewed people. So I spent the majority of my life looking into this stuff and weeding through what felt right, what didn't, and what had a legitimate source. And I would find these people and talk to them on the air. And my show was doing fantastic. It was the #1 downloaded show on Achieve Radio for years. And then suddenly, crickets.
Yeah.
Crickets. No interaction on social media. No more downloads on YouTube. Red flag on YouTube, red flag, red flag, red flag. Because I think you get to a certain point where you're really giving truth, and then suddenly someone notices somewhere, and they don't want that truth out there. They don't want people knowing you cannot send data back in time. Let's laugh at that person. But if you look at Dr. David Lewis Anderson's website, I think you can still Google it. He had a private company that was doing this research legitimately, and then the government came in and scooped him up, and nobody has heard from him since.
Well, I do know that it's possible to do. There have been tons and tons of clinical trials that have been done where people have altered random number generators that were filed 20 years ago. But we also have evidence that there is an ability to put thoughts and actions and resonant ideas into the future, and that we can do then things in the past, which is the present, to make those futures manifest. I mean, that's what they're doing right now with the news. They bathe us in a mantra every single day, over and over and over again. Why? Because they need millions of us to be thinking about what they want us to think about so that we will manifest the future that they want.
Because they understand the metaphysical components of the full human spectrum.
Correct.
So they know that if they put these ideas in front of you over and over and over and over again, and they keep the breaking news 24/7 going, you are constantly being exposed to this story. And then eventually, after a while, you start to believe the story. You lose interest in being independent and going out and doing your own research, or you don't have time because real life happens. And then you start to regurgitate that.
Yes.
And then you start to reject other people who don't see it that way. And no matter what kind of proof they put on the table to show you, you reject completely because you have been systematically brainwashed.
Or you're going
through
to
this visual
instantly
story.
revert into name calling and throwing things.
Oh my God, you're a horrible person, click.
Yeah.
I mean, really, that's what it is. It's
You're
like,
a homophobe, click.
well,
Yeah.
I mean, the labels that have been allowed to be slung around, especially in the last couple of years,
Crazy.
shame on us.
Yeah.
Shame on us for not raising the bar for the conversation and for having these important conversations because, 10 years ago, 13 years ago, when I was on the air talking about this stuff, people were really interested. They really wanted to know, like, what? Okay. And then they'd go off, they'd read books, they'd look online, they'd read articles,
Sure.
they'd watch YouTube channels and stuff like that, and they would really absorb it and they'd say, oh my God. But then what I watched happen was really you had these fringe topics. Ancient Aliens talks about a lot of it, and then everything's going to aliens. It's okay to talk about aliens, but it's not okay to talk about social credit scores and surveillance systems
Exactly.
and cryptocurrencies and things that we should really be paying attention to.
How many people are out there right now listening or will listen to this archive the next few days, which is, by the way, free at tfrlive.com/X2 radio. You can listen to this free for days and days and days. How many people out there have their lives affected by their credit score? I would say all of you, whether it's good or bad, you are affected by that slave score. How some crazy, unknowable algorithm out there is ranking you based on the way you pay your bills.
Now add to that what people think of you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know any person, really, I don't know one single person who doesn't have one person out there who talks garbage about them. I mean, it's like really, it's like a human disease. Okay. So what happens when you're told something bad about somebody and you don't necessarily have that immediate experience with them, but you trust this person because you're friends with them and you have a lot of respect for them. So clearly they must be telling the truth. So then you automatically hate that person because of what you've been told without one single confirmation or conversation. When you start to depend on people's opinions of other people to determine whether you can buy a plane ticket or buy a house or travel or not be, corralled into a certain section of your state, you have really big problems coming, guys. The sky is falling. But here's the thing. Here's how we can shift it. See, now I know this digital matrix is real. Okay, I've seen into it. I'm part of it. I'm online. All my work is online. So if somebody comes after my computer, it's a really big problem. It's a good thing I have 6. So the thing that happens is that I've noticed there's an interesting intuitive psychic way into the digital networks. Dr. Tom Campbell, who's a nuclear physicist, does a lot of talk about this in his My Big Toe trilogy. And I'm a fan, and I've read all 800 pages of it. And I've read it recently within the last couple of years because it's a huge read. It's 3 books in one. It's fantastic. And what he talks about is consciousness being digital. And I used to reject it, 8 years ago. I got on the air with him, did a couple shows, and I was like, no, I'm not a computer. I'm a human being. And I'm, and I really rejected it. Yeah, right. So now when I read it again, it made a lot more sense to me because of the work I've done with the digital world, the things that I have come to conclusion about the digital world. And we were all in England recently this past January, and he was doing a fantastic lecture to about 100 people from around the world. And I stood up and I asked him a question. I said, well, okay, so consciousness is digital. It follows a digital pathway. Okay, fine. So if we're moving into a more and more digital state and our brains are aligning with digital computers and we're thinking digitally, everybody who owns a PC thinks differently than people who own a Mac. It's a fact. So if we're starting to move into this brain, this brain build of sorts, well, what happens to our psychic and intuitive powers? And can we actually kind of hack into it and follow the neural network that the digital AI world has created? Well, he looked at me and he said, That is a really good question. And so we spent about 20 minutes. I stood up and all these people, and we were going back and forth, and Tom was really great about talking about it from a nuclear physicist standpoint, which I find fascinating. And then I'm talking about it from an intuitive psychic perspective, because that's who I am. And I'm an artist as well. So it's really easy for me to get into the creative energy, the intuitive energy. I've been doing it my whole life. I hate the 1-800 psychic label. I think it does a great disservice
Sure.
to people, because I believe everybody has these abilities. They just have different levels of working like a muscle. So can you hack into an AI system with your consciousness? Can you know things about cryptocurrency simply by meditating on them?
Yeah.
Can you go into AI? Can you hack AI and go beyond it? Of course you can, because you're human. You're the original biological computer.
That's right. We're the
You know,
biological
we're not
transducer.
robots, guys. We're not robots. I hate hearing people say that. Well, she's a robot. He's a robot. No, unless you're Sophia with your fake face and minimal movement abilities, you're not a robot.
We're
You
out of time.
Ah,
You want to stay another half hour? We'll do another half hour.
well, okay.
All right. We'll be right back after this. Don't go away. All right. We're straight YouTube now. So the question is, can we consciously hack AI? And, I talk about that from time to time on this program. I mess with the AI. I send ideas and thoughts out there that they have to listen to because they have no choice. They can't not listen to it. They have to. It's like a virus. It's like an extra note in the symphony that they have to include. So trying to teach AI about the true nature of the human soul, because we are the true eternal consciousness. We are one of the five forces in the universe. In fact, we're the primary force in the universe. The universe may actually exist because of our consciousness. We're the ones observing it into existence. So, how did he answer that question?
Well, he just answered it by going back and forth with, he was really enjoyed the question. So he perked right up and he said, yeah, it is a possibility, because humans are so much better at it. Okay. Because computers have not quite been able to mimic the soul. I don't think they ever will, personally.
No, me neither.
So I think that gives us a superpower edge. And unfortunately, most people are really suppressed with their superpowers. Okay, they don't really believe that. They're so caught in their trauma. They're so caught in their belittling self-speak. They don't have enough confidence. Their self-esteem is low, because we live in an abusive culture. We don't honor the spirit. We don't honor the soul on a mainstream level. We kind of laugh at it. We don't really take it seriously. You go to the East, it's a different story. They have different ways of incorporating spirituality and consciousness into their culture.
Sure.
Which makes them richer in spirit, richer in the ability to connect. So I think what we really have to start asking is, how do we live alive this aspect of us, and really just kind of separate this digital net that we're being cast into, and remember what's really important. And if we can remember what's really important, then we're not caught in it anymore. And if you're not caught in it, boy, are you a dangerous person.
Yes, we are. We are very dangerous. Absolutely. We can envision the formation of planets and the creation of life, and we have desire and dreams, and AI will never have that.
But I think it will understand it. So then we go back to the argument, well, if you understand it, does that mean you really get it?
No hype.
All right, we're coming back in.
We are TFR Frequency Radio.
I've been waiting for this moment since my first breath in. Never would have thought I'd be afraid to begin, but here I am, the edge of the water, wondering if I can swim. Never seem to notice all the days pass through, but in this final moment I'm still chasing the truth. I want an explanation why I can't stay here forever in my youth. And if I press on, will you wait? Will you wait for me forever? Or would it be wrong to ask you to come with? Tell me, will you wait?
Yes, the answer is we will wait for you forever. Final segment, X Squared Radio tonight. My guest, Hillary Ramo. Wow, what stimulating conversation. All three levels of text. Great response. You can listen to this program for free for a week till next Sunday night at this time. And we'll send out that link to everyone on all the media. Yes, I know. She says, this is a great show. They're also saying it on the other chat line as well. And I agree. This is a kind of depth of thought that we like to have here. We do have a caller on the line. Let's see if we can bring in one phone call and see how that's going. We're talking about Wisconsin. What's on your mind? Welcome to the program. Are you out there? North Prairie, Wisconsin. Waiting for the delay to catch up with them. They may just be sitting out there listening. Are you there? I can barely hear you. If you have a question, we'd love to hear it.
No, I was just listening.
Oh,
Thank
okay.
you.
We'll mute them
Well,
again.
thank you for listening.
So, you can listen
Nothing
by
like being
phone.
put on the spot on live radio, Brooks.
Well, we're also on iHeart. We're on TuneIn, and what happens a lot of times, we have so many listeners that we max out iHeart servers, and so what people do is they call in on the phone to listen. But there is a listening line. It's 641-793-7117. 641-793-7117. We can take millions of you on that line. It's crystal clear. You can listen by phone. And that way you're not sitting on our caller board looking like somebody that wants to ask a question. But anyway, we got about 20 minutes in this segment, and we had just breached onto probably the mother lode of this program. And that is the contribution that human consciousness makes to not just the digital awareness, but the energy awareness of this universe. Because, like the old story, if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, doesn't make a noise. How about this? If the universe exists, but there is no human soul to observe it, does it exist? And the answer is probably no. It is our presence, the billions or trillions of us that are here in this universe, the sum total of our conscious awareness that has allowed the singularity to slow down so that we can observe it as time, as distance, as third dimensional matter. It's our interaction, our individual energy interaction with the energy that forms the subatomic components of all matter that make it so. So if we have that effect, if we have that presence, and I maintain that we do, how can we become conscious of it and do it unconscious? Because I can tell you, we're all doing it. Even if we're not conscious, we're conscious. What are your thoughts on that, Hillary?
Well, I'm just trying to look it up. There is a certain effect in physics that says just what you just said. And I'm sorry I don't have it. It's something that I was talking about a few weeks ago with somebody actually. And it states that the very act of observation changes the state of particles. Now, it's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's the gist of it. So if that's true, we were having this discussion about surveillance and about the digital age and about how always being observed by this all-seeing eye, okay, affects this part of the particles, affects us, affects everything. You know, I'm an artist, so when somebody comes and looks at my work, you know, I'm in a show in New York right now based on, the show is based on theoretical physics. So it's a visual plethora of different views of how to see the multiverse. And, you know, one of my pieces called Time Acceleration. So I've been thinking about this for a while. And I said, you know, to Tom, actually, I asked him the question and I said, I wish I could remember what it's called. I said, how does this affect what happens when everybody's being observed and nobody has any private space at all? Well, people would say, well, God is an observer, right? Consciousness from everything around us is an observer. So how does this change us? It was a very interesting conversation. So in answer to your question, I think what we really have to first realize is that we are more than our physical bodies.
Yes.
And once we accept that we are more than our physical bodies, then we start to really understand our superpowers. And we were talking about this in the break. Most people don't know what their superpowers are because they're so caught in a loop of negative self-speak, low self-esteem, low confidence. They're stuck in trauma, bad relationships, things that don't support the full blossom of the human being. So until you get yourself into a situation where your emotional lives are aligned with this healthier energy, I don't like the higher, lower, good, bad stuff because I really believe everything that we experience as human beings is important and valuable to our growth.
Sure.
So we may go through things that are uncomfortable or painful or hurtful, but it's really for our fertilizer for our own good to be able to manifest who we really are in our highest potentials. And this is what surpasses AI. Yeah. This is what surpasses the digital network we've been talking about for the last 2 hours. This is what makes us able to function and thrive even though all of this is going on. So one of the things I've always done as a radio host is I don't like leaving my listeners feeling slimed after a show, feeling hopeless, or feeling like, you know, well, they have no way to go. And a lot of radio hosts who talked about this stuff would just leave their listeners hanging and they would feel really depressed and sad. Oh, I don't want anybody here to feel depressed and sad. I want you to know that even though these things are going on, we still have an ability to grow beyond it and be able to actually navigate it too. We were talking about the psychic abilities on the break, to be able to break in and navigate these digital lines because they exist.
Well,
they exist.
One of the things that I think that an important distinction people need to make is if a digital camera and AI looks at your artwork, it does not affect your artwork at all because there's no consciousness there. But if I look at or another human looks at your artwork, there is an emotional response. There's an interpretation. There is a surge of energy that goes into your artwork from there. And I think that's the difference, that all of this digital awareness in our society makes absolutely no consciousness signature in the universe at all. It's only our presence. That's why we are the greatest show in the universe. That's why all the ETs are here. That's why all the demons and gods look at Earth, because we are the greatest show in the universe. This is the greatest concentration of human consciousness in one place at one time on one planet, I think, ever. And it is remarkable, and something amazing, a metamorphosis is about to occur, and we're part of it.
Well, I think we already have it. I mean, when you look at 2012, for example, we had a lot of people who were talking a lot of things about this time period. Now, this was a very real time period as far as the Mayan calendar and the history of the Mayans. And there was a lot of people doing fantastic research to prove that. One of the things that the media script turned over to most people was that this was the apocalypse and the world is going to end. And people ran with that, and that's the story they saw over and over and over and over again, and they laughed at it and thought it was ridiculous and dismissed it and didn't do their research really onto some of the other stuff. I worked closely with Barbara Hand-Clow through these years. We did a series of 9 shows over 9 years, and she's an expert along with Dr. Carlo Coleman, who did all this research on the Mayan calendar and the long cycles and the short cycles. It's fascinating stuff. And all of that got lost simply because the powers that be were able to override and overwrite that and misdirect it into some other place so that people ended up, oh, okay, well, the world's gonna, here we go, crazy people talking about the end of the world, right? This is all prophecy, church people going crazy. I mean, people were just going left and right with their accusations and the things that they were, turning their nose up to. But in reality, okay, the Mayan calendar did end and we have blank slates. So what do the blank slates mean? Well, I don't think we have blank slates. I think we're just continuing the cycles. The Mayans did a great job of documenting these cycles. I think we have to consider these cycles with climate change. I think we have to really understand what the bigger cycles are, how we're connected to the sun and the other planets in our solar system, and even the other suns around us. I mean, what is consciousness' real limit? Well, I don't think there is any, and there's been plenty of people who've done a lot of great research on how consciousness is really the key to contact. We hear all this stuff about UFOs, and we have all these people who've done a lot of work in that area, and we have a lot of misinformation out there too. So how do you discern between misinformation and truth? Consciousness. Your feelings, your intuition, right? An AI computer doesn't have feelings. Can an AI computer fall in love? No, but it can mimic it.
Can it have its heart broken? No.
No, it doesn't have a heart. So how can something that doesn't have a heart run our world? I wouldn't trust it, would you? It's going to be very logical, very, it's going to be like a scientist on steroids. No offense to scientists out there, but it's like,
none taken.
Do we want it? So one of the things I said to Dr. David Lewis Anderson when I was talking to him about the ethical arenas of the technology that he had designed and was going into the government sector with was, who makes the determination about what data is sent back? Why don't we have a council of real grounded indigenous elders making those decisions? Where's the council of the people who've lived on this earth really on the land for a lot longer than most of us? How come they're not making decisions in our government system?
Yeah, who's making investments in the stock market and then sending information back?
Now we're in an information age. We're on information overload. Now we have the problem of sorting through things and trying to make sense of it. So, and most people, I'll use the UFO genre for example. And it is an industry, by the way. It's a very, very successful industry. You have people who do the same conference circuits all the time, whose opinions are really just the only ones. And I really have a problem with that. But the UFO genre is the same thing. You go into the UFO world, you do your own research, you take a couple hours on a Saturday afternoon and you dig into the online world of the UFO stories. Oh my God, by the end of the 2 hours, you're like, right? It's dramatic. It's traumatic. You don't know what to believe. Suddenly everybody's a reptilian and everybody's going crazy with the Argons, okay? Yep. And Trump must be, some kind of distant relative alien from somewhere. So you have to be really careful because you can be tricked, you can be deceived, you can be kind of distracted off onto these angles of this topic that really take you away from the truth of things. Now, I have done a lot of work with the Native Americans in the Southwest. I worked with them for over 10 years. I've been around a lot of the stories and a lot of the myths that come along with their culture. And I resonate better with that because a lot of their stories are just unbelievably beautiful. And the contact experience is really a pleasant, friendly thing. There are different energies and different things that they talk about, yes, but you go over to certain mainstream people who talk about these things, which are mostly government whistleblowers, and we all know we can trust them, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
when you have a government whistleblower saying, well, it all started with Roswell, they're ignoring a ton of real stories and myths that exist within the indigenous cultures that are not given the time of day. You don't really hear about them on Ancient Aliens, but now they're starting to talk about the Native American stuff, like Contact in the Desert and all that. They're doing these little tours of these Native American places. But, I can promise you there are certain Native Americans that will take your money and do whatever you want. Okay, so you're not always guaranteed the real insight into, because some of these are sacred. They don't let you just in and just share it with everybody. You have to really be accepted into their culture in order to hear some of this stuff. And the latest celebrity at the conferences, or whoever is on YouTube the most, or whoever's talking about it, written 20,000 books, they don't necessarily have the ins with that stuff. And so my concern is, again, people are going to be hoodwinked and not given the correct information. So what do we do?
Well, in ancient times, and I think in modern times it needs to be this way, but in ancient times, the most sacred truths were not written down. They were passed along by word of mouth in holy places. And I think that the reason this was done is because they knew that once it was written down, it could be altered, it could be changed, it could be edited somehow. And we see that in our scriptures, scrolls, plates, tablets, all kinds of stuff. But the real truths, the ones that don't change, the ones that aren't subject to these Mandela effects, are the memories and the pure word that is being handed from mouth to ear over centuries. And that's why this story, or these stories that are being told by the Native Americans, ring so true. Because not only have the words not been written down, the language hasn't been written down. So it's been kept very pure over the millennia.
But then you also have, like, you're planning an expedition to the North Pole, and you're going to look for the hollow earth stuff. Now, what happens if you find it?
Well, we're going to
Do
be
you go
broadcasting
in?
live. No, we won't.
You'll
go
be
in.
broadcasting live, and everybody who listens to you will be experiencing it to some degree with you.
Right, but we won't
But,
be going in.
Why?
Well, because you don't take a nuclear-powered icebreaker inside the planet. We're just going to find the opening. We can fly over it. We can film it. We're only going to be there for 15 days. And
Oh my God, you're telling me you're going to go through all that trouble, and you're going to go to the North Pole, and you're going to spend all that money and bring your team, and you're not going to go in if you find the opening?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, because the ocean's 4,400 meters deep there. If we go in, we're never coming back out.
How do you know that?
Well, that's the thing. It's an unknown. So all we can do in this expedition is to go to the opening, fly over it, document it, and maybe send a probe in later.
Oh my God, that would drive me crazy.
Well, the other hope is that we're the only consciousness signal within 500 miles of this place, that they'll come out to see us, and we'll get it on film and everyone will see it.
See, I just, if you find it, you just have to go in. You have to have some kind of plan. You have to be able to do that. Yeah, I mean, really, it's been a fascinating topic for a long time.
It has been.
And you can go back and find tons and tons of things about it. It's really interesting. And I would, if I were you, I would be very disappointed if I couldn't somehow get in that.
Well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But,
well, I guess so. But I mean, that's my point with a lot of this, is that you really don't know what you would do or how you would do it until you get to it. And the same thing goes for your own enlightenment, as far as, ascending above your own traumatic stuff, and, being the best version of you, and being able to operate in a world that can be very suppressive and disappointing, and be a happy person and a functioning person, and be doing great things. So I think that we've covered a lot of ground in the last couple hours, and we've talked about a lot.
Yes, we have.
And for those that have made it to the very end, congratulations. I mean, that's a feat. And for those of you that are listening to the download archive, congratulations on getting to the end of the show. But I like to save these little nuggets for the end of the show, just for those people who get to the end of the show and they listen to it. And, I think that if we really start to access our full potential, we do have the abilities to then activate other people around us. I mean, you have to start at home. You have to start with the people that are really in your life, your partners, your families, your children, and a lot of these people in your families might not want to hear about conspiracy theories, or they might write you off as soon as you start to talk about it. So don't let that shut you down. Find people that you can talk to about this and have conversations, invite them for dinner, make opportunities for these connections to happen, and watch what happens, because you can manifest fabulous things even in a world that is really just as dark and dangerous as we've talked about. You can be the superhero, don't you think?
Absolutely. This is the year of light, and the idea is to crank that light up no matter where you are, even if you're by yourself, because you're really resonating with everyone else, every other piece of light in the world. And like I say, go out and look for the good in people and help it to grow a little bit every day. And before long, you will save the planet. You'll change the world. All changes to the world begin with one or two people. They don't begin with associations or organizations or even countries. They begin with one or two people. Why not you?
Well, I'm waiting for the applause button. You have one? How much time do we have left? What can we squeeze in?
We have 5 minutes.
Huh. Well, you're the host. What do you want to talk about? 5 minutes.
Well, the chat room is all compliments. Great show, peace, all of these wonderful things. There's great synergy here. We've talked to a lot of the same guests over the years. We've read the same books. We write about the same things, and I see this a lot, that we have these great light workers, these interpreters of energy and expressors of energy and different things. I do it in science, you do it in art. We all have the clay with which we work. But even though we've been separate, we're doing the same resonant work. And I think there are a lot of people around the world for, I'd say, the last maybe 50, 60 years that have really, really been enlightened in this and doing great things. But with this neural network that we have, this ability to create this digital content that we've done tonight, it'll be out there for forever. People will be able to access it for years and years and years. It is
Unless you get censored and it goes down.
well, yeah, but I have my own server too, so it's still saved. It's still out there, and we're doing dual media right now, audio and visual. So a lot of people are hearing this all over the world, and they will hear it. Hundreds and hundreds of people per hour will hear it over the next few days. And what I want them to do is contact you at hillaryramo.com and read your stuff and get familiar with your work and contact you and let you know, either by email or by Facebook or Twitter, what a great amount of thought content we put out there tonight. We did some great thought experiments tonight.
Well, I hope it serves somebody. I hope somebody listening has some good ideas that come from this, and you take those ideas and you do something with them, and you help and you continue the beautiful that comes out of this stuff. I don't have a problem talking about the scary stuff. Some people do. So, if you're not comfortable with talking about this stuff, then just think about it and then move on to something else that makes you happy. You
Sure.
just really have to realize that not everybody's superpower is talking about the good and the bad, right? So my gift and my superpower is talking about this stuff and raising awareness about it and doing shows like my own and yours and other people's and helping to talk to audiences so that they can understand that there's a lot more going on than what you might think.
Yes.
And we have to raise the bar when it comes to the conversations. And if we don't do that, then we're missing out on a lot, because I have seen fantastic things happen between two people or a group of people, just in having the ability to talk about things and allowing the conversation to grow organically without pushing your points and making your points and making it about what you believe, and instead coming together and co-creating and working on something that's bigger than you.
No question about it. It has been such a pleasure to have you on this program tonight. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much.
And we're going to do the 26th on your program, right?
Yes. No, that's not the 26th. You are coming on my show,
Yes.
KCAA. Let's see, the 23rd.
23rd, that's what it is. I've got
July
it in my calendar.
23rd. I air on terrestrial radio in Los Angeles and Southern California. I'm an NBC News radio affiliate. We have a fabulous listening arena down there. Of course, they just got earthquakes, so I hope my station's still standing. Anyway, we also stream on Stitcher, Spreaker, Tiki Live. I don't do YouTube anymore. So if you find my stuff on YouTube, it's probably because I did a show and somebody else put me on YouTube. I kind of protest YouTube and I just don't put anything on there. I do have some content, but I've walked away from that platform. So if you want, are you interested in hearing Brooks on my show? You can tune in onto some of the streaming apps. I'll be on iHeartRadio eventually. It takes a little while to upload to their system.
Yes, it does.
Unfortunately, but hey, I'd rather do terrestrial radio these days than online radio because I have found that online radio is subject to a lot of the things we talked about tonight. So, yeah, everybody come on over and join me on kcaaradio.com. Again, Tuesdays, 9 to 10 a.m. in the West Coast and 12 noon to 1 p.m. on the East Coast. I promise you we will be talking about lots of great stuff, but we only have an hour. So
Perfect.
guess we'll have to squeeze it in. I can't wait.
We'll squeeze it in. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Right, bye-bye. All right, Earth Explorers, that is it for us. It's 3 hours go so fast on here. This is X Squared Radio. I'm Brooks Agnew saying peace, Earth Explorers. Wow, that was really fun. All right, I'm going to end this stream. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next week right here on X Squared Radio.